What if the greatest empires in history weren't built on fear or force, but on something far more profound, something invisible yet unbreakable? Think about the Roman Empire at its peak, a civilization that spanned continents and endured for centuries. How did leaders like Marcus Aurelius command such fierce devotion from millions? The answer might surprise you. It wasn't about wealth, weapons, or even authority. It was about mastering the mind. The ancient Stoics understood something modern leadership often overlooks. True loyalty isn't taken, it's earned through psychological insight and inner virtue. As Marcus Aurelius himself wrote in his personal journal, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." That single line captures the essence of Stoic leadership. It begins not with commanding others, but with mastering oneself. Imagine a ruler who doesn't demand obedience through threats, but inspires allegiance through unwavering character. This is the secret the Stoics guarded closely. They believed that the foundation of lasting loyalty wasn't external power, but internal perspective. What if the key to unbreakable devotion wasn't about what you could make people do, but how you could make them feel seen, valued, and part of something meaningful? The Stoic emperors didn't just rule, they connected. They practiced self-control not as a display of strength, but as a demonstration of reliability. They showed empathy not as a weakness, but as a bridge to understanding. They embraced resilience not just to survive challenges, but to show others how to thrive amid them. And they lived with purpose, aligning their actions with deeper values that resonated with the human spirit. In this video, we're going to explore the psychological blueprints these emperors followed, principles that transformed subjects into supporters and commands into commitments. We'll delve into how self-control builds trust, how empathy forges connection, how resilience inspires confidence, and how purpose creates belonging. These aren't ancient relics, they're timeless tools for anyone looking to lead, inspire, or build something that lasts. Whether you're guiding a team, raising a family, or striving to be a better friend, these Stoic insights offer a path to influence that's both profound and practical. So join me as we step into the minds of history's most effective leaders, not to learn how they conquered lands, but how they conquered hearts. The most enduring loyalty is earned, not demanded. This is the cornerstone of the Stoic blueprint for leadership, a principle that shifts the focus from external power to internal character. For the Stoics, virtue wasn't a vague ideal. It was a practical toolkit of 4 cardinal qualities: wisdom to make sound judgments, courage to act on them, justice to ensure fairness for all, and temperance to maintain self-control. A leader who embodies these virtues doesn't need to rely on the force of their title, because they command a far greater authority, the unwavering trust of their followers. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful men, constantly reminded himself in his private writings that his role was one of service, not supremacy. He understood that control is an illusion, but influence, built on a foundation of good character, is lasting and real. This approach transforms leadership from a transaction into a relationship, where loyalty is given freely because it is inspired by respect, not extracted through fear. The Roman philosopher Seneca perfectly captured this idea when he wrote, "A king is not made by a crown or a title, but by just actions and noble character." He argued that a leader's most powerful tool is their own example. People are far more likely to follow what you do than what you say. When a leader demonstrates courage in the face of adversity, their team feels empowered to be brave. When a leader shows unwavering fairness, even when it's difficult, it creates an environment of psychological safety where people know they will be treated with respect. This consistency between word and action is what builds unshakable credibility. It sends a clear message. This person's values are not situational. They are a fundamental part of who they are, and that makes them predictable in the best possible way. You know what they stand for, and in a world full of uncertainty, that reliability becomes a beacon others willingly gravitate toward. Consider the profound contrast between a modern corporate CEO who rules through intimidation and quarterly targets, and a leader like Abraham Lincoln, who guided a fractured nation with a deep moral compass. The former might achieve short-term compliance, but it's often laced with resentment and high turnover. The latter, like the Stoic emperors, built a legacy of devotion by prioritizing principle over power. Lincoln's unwavering commitment to justice and his profound empathy, even for his opponents, inspired a level of loyalty that endured through the nation's darkest hours. He didn't just manage people, he connected with their shared humanity and appealed to their higher selves. This is the Stoic method in action. Virtue becomes the common language that unites a leader with their followers, creating a bond far stronger than any contract or command. Think about your own life for a moment. Can you recall a person, a teacher, a manager, a family member whose integrity was so consistent and transparent that you found yourself wanting to support them, not out of obligation, but out of genuine admiration? That feeling, that voluntary alignment of your will with theirs, is the exact type of loyalty the Stoics sought to cultivate. It's the difference between someone who is followed because they are the boss and someone who is followed because they are worthy of being followed. This distinction is everything. When virtue is the engine of leadership, loyalty isn't a response. It's a natural, organic reaction to being in the presence of character that elevates everyone around it. What if the key to loyalty was caring less about winning and more about doing what's right? This might sound counterintuitive in a world obsessed with metrics and final scores, but the Stoics understood a profound psychological truth. A leader who is chained to specific outcomes is a leader who is perpetually anxious, reactive, and ultimately unreliable. The philosophy of cognitive detachment, as taught by Epictetus, isn't about apathy or a lack of ambition. It's about making a crucial distinction between what is within our power and what is not. Our own actions, our efforts, our intentions, and our judgments, these are our domain. The final result, other people's opinions, external events, even success or failure, these are not. A leader who internalizes this distinction frees themselves from the roller coaster of external validation and instead anchors their identity in their own virtuous effort. This creates a presence of profound stability. Followers are no longer following someone who is desperately trying to control the uncontrollable. They are following someone who is in control of themselves, regardless of the storm raging outside. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of Rome's most influential teachers, framed this idea with stunning clarity in his handbook, the Enchiridion. He wrote, "Some things are in our control and some are not. Our opinions are in our control, our impulses, desires, aversions. Our bodies are not in our control, nor our possessions, our reputations, or our public offices." For a leader, this is a liberation. It means you can pour every ounce of your energy into making the right decision and taking the correct action. And then, once the die is cast, you can release your grip on the outcome. This isn't giving up, it's growing up. It's recognizing that the quality of your effort is your achievement and the result is simply information. This mindset is contagious. When a team sees their leader remain calm and focused after a loss or a setback, not because they don't care, but because they know they did everything within their power, it instills a deep sense of security. That stability becomes the bedrock of loyalty. We can see this principle in action with the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius during the brutal Marcomannic Wars. For years, he faced relentless invasions, a devastating plague that wiped out a portion of his army, and immense political pressure back in Rome. A lesser leader, attached solely to the outcome of swift victory, might have become reckless, desperate, or tyrannical. But Marcus, through his Stoic practice, focused on what he could control: his strategy, his treatment of his soldiers, his discipline in allocating resources, and his own courage. His personal meditations from this period are filled with reminders to confine yourself to the present and to do the work of a human being without expectation. His composure under extreme pressure did not go unnoticed. His troops, seeing their emperor share their hardships without panic or despair, were inspired to match his steadfastness. Their loyalty wasn't just to a commander who promised victory. It was to a leader who demonstrated unwavering character in the face of possible defeat. Now bring this into your own world. Think about a time you were leading a project, coaching a team, or even navigating a difficult conversation with a friend or family member. How much of your mental energy was consumed by worrying about the perfect outcome? How much fear did you have about things going wrong, about being judged, or about not getting the result you wanted? Now, imagine how different that experience would have felt if you had consciously redirected all that energy away from the outcome and into the process itself, into listening more attentively, acting with more integrity, or simply giving your best effort without a constant eye on the scoreboard. That shift in focus is transformative. It reduces anxiety, it makes you more present and effective in the moment, and perhaps most importantly, it makes you a calmer, more dependable presence that others naturally want to trust and follow. Your detachment from the result allows you to be more attached to the people and the principles that truly matter. Loyalty deepens when people feel seen and understood. This isn't about superficial recognition. It's about a leader's genuine ability to step outside their own limited viewpoint and truly comprehend the experiences, struggles, and hopes of those they lead. The Stoics had a powerful mental exercise for this exact purpose, a tool to shatter the walls of the ego and build bridges of connection. They called it the view from above. This practice involves mentally pulling back from your immediate situation, the argument, the stress, the frustration, and imagining yourself looking down from a great height. You see your city, then your country, then the entire planet as a tiny blue marble drifting in the vastness of space. From this cosmic perspective, your personal worries begin to look smaller, but more importantly, you see the incredible interconnectedness of all people. You see everyone as fellow humans, all striving, all fearing, all hoping, all just trying to find their way. For a leader, this shift in perspective is transformative. It moves you from a mindset of me versus them to one of us. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this theme in his private writings, using it as an antidote to irritation and a catalyst for compassion. He wrote, "Let your mind be carried up to the heavens, and you will see how puny our earthly affairs are. As you look down on them from above, you will despise them and simultaneously see the unity of all things." He wasn't advocating for dismissing problems as unimportant, but for seeing them in their true proportion and recognizing our shared humanity within them. When a leader can regularly access this viewpoint, it fundamentally changes their interactions. They stop seeing a frustrated employee as a problem to be managed and start seeing a person who might be overwhelmed, under-resourced, or worried about providing for their family. This ability to reframe a situation is the very essence of empathy, and it's what makes people feel valued not just for their output, but for their humanity. Consider a modern team leader facing a department that's consistently missing deadlines. A leader operating from a narrow, ego-driven perspective might respond with blame, threats, and increased pressure, viewing the team as lazy or incompetent. This approach breeds resentment, fear, and secret disloyalty. Now, imagine a leader who practices the view from above. They pull back mentally. They consider the market pressures the company is under, but they also consider the team's perspective. The confusing new software rollout from 6 months ago that was never fully addressed, the 2 key team members who left and were never replaced, the personal stress of the holiday season affecting everyone's focus. From this broader vantage point, the problem isn't a bad team, it's a system under strain. The leader calls a meeting not to reprimand but to listen. They say, "I know we're all struggling to hit these targets, and I want to understand what's getting in our way from your perspective." This act of empathetic inquiry, born from a wider view, makes every person in that room feel heard and valued. The solutions that emerge will be collaborative, and the loyalty that forms will be deep and lasting because it's built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Think back on your own experiences for a moment. Can you recall a specific instance when you were struggling with something, a difficult task, a personal issue, a moment of self-doubt, and someone in a position of authority truly saw it? They didn't just offer an empty platitude, they demonstrated that they understood your particular challenge and perhaps even shared a similar experience of their own. How did that make you feel? Chances are your respect for that person skyrocketed, your trust in them solidified, and your willingness to go the extra mile for them became almost automatic. That is the powerful alchemy of empathy in action. It transforms a transactional relationship into a human connection, and from that connection springs the most unbreakable loyalty imaginable. It signals that you are not just a cog in a machine, but a valued member of a shared journey. What if the toughest moments are where loyalty is truly forged? It's in the fire of adversity that a leader's true mettle is tested and revealed for all to see. The Stoics didn't just believe in enduring hardship, they reframed it entirely. An obstacle wasn't a roadblock to success. It was the very path to it, a necessary trial that stripped away everything non-essential and revealed the core of a person's character. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher and advisor to Emperor Nero, put it with characteristic bluntness: "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." He argued that difficulties are not misfortunes, but rather the raw materials fortune provides for us to build our virtue. For a leader, this perspective is everything. A crisis is no longer a threat to their authority, but an opportunity to demonstrate it. When everything is falling apart, a leader who remains calm, focused, and principled provides something priceless, a beacon of stability in the chaos. Followers aren't just looking for someone to solve the problem, they are looking for someone who isn't terrified by it. That unwavering presence in the storm inspires a loyalty that comfortable, easy times can never produce. We can see this principle etched into history during the reign of Emperor Hadrian. Early in his rule, he faced a massive rebellion in the province of Judea, a brutal and costly conflict that threatened the stability of the entire Eastern Empire. A leader driven by ego or panic might have responded with overwhelming, indiscriminate force, seeking a quick and bloody victory to reassert control. But Hadrian, a student of Stoic philosophy, understood that true strength was measured by restraint and strategic wisdom, not just raw power. He didn't just send his legions, he went himself. He immersed himself in the complexities of the situation, studied the terrain, and understood the grievances of the people he was fighting. His response was firm but deliberate, focused on a long-term solution that would bring sustainable peace rather than just temporary submission. His soldiers witnessed a commander who shared their hardships, who remained intellectually and emotionally engaged in the most dire circumstances, and who valued a lasting resolution over a flashy, vengeful conquest. This demonstration of resilient, thoughtful leadership in the face of a severe crisis cemented their loyalty. They saw that their emperor was not a distant ruler in a palace but a steadfast commander in the field, and they fought for him with renewed conviction. Now translate this ancient lesson into a modern context. Think about a manager navigating a company through a painful round of layoffs. One leader might hide behind closed doors, issuing the difficult decisions through impersonal emails and allowing fear and uncertainty to fester. This approach destroys trust and severs loyalty instantly. Another leader, guided by the Stoic embrace of adversity, would see this crisis as a painful but crucial test of their character. They would communicate with brutal honesty and profound compassion, explaining the situation clearly, taking responsibility, and treating those who are leaving with immense dignity and respect. They would show up, look people in the eye, and share in the collective grief, all while projecting a steady confidence about navigating a path forward. The team that remains sees this. They see a leader who does not flinch from difficult duties, who handles the hardest moments with grace and integrity. That experience forges a bond of loyalty that no company picnic or bonus could ever buy. It's a loyalty built on the shared experience of enduring something difficult together and coming out the other side with mutual respect intact. So take a moment to reflect on your own life. Can you recall a specific challenge, a project that failed spectacularly, a period of intense personal or professional uncertainty, a conflict that seemed impossible to resolve, where someone's reaction to the pressure fundamentally changed your opinion of them? Perhaps it was a friend who became the calm, logical center of a family crisis, or a colleague who took ownership of a collective mistake without casting blame. Their resilience in that moment didn't just solve a problem, it revealed their deepest character, and in doing so, it likely transformed your respect for them into something far deeper and more durable. A trust that they are the kind of person you want by your side when things get hard, because they've already proven they won't break. Trust is the currency of loyalty, and it's earned through honesty. This principle cuts to the very heart of the Stoic blueprint, because without a foundation of truthful communication, every other virtue risks being perceived as a performance. The Stoics placed immense value on speaking with integrity, not as a tactical choice, but as a fundamental duty to reason and to others. For them, deception wasn't just a lie to another person, it was a lie to oneself, a corruption of one's own rational faculty. A leader who obscures the truth, who spins reality to avoid short-term discomfort, might believe they are maintaining control. In reality, they are slowly eroding the very ground they stand on. Uncertainty is a vacuum, and in the absence of clear, honest information, that vacuum will be filled with speculation, fear, and rumor. Clarity, even when the news is difficult, eliminates that vacuum. It provides a shared reality for everyone to operate within, and that shared reality is the bedrock of psychological security. When people know where they stand, even if the standing is precarious, they can begin to problem solve. They feel respected enough to be included in the truth, and that respect is what transforms passive subjects into active, loyal participants. Epictetus, who spent his life teaching the practical application of philosophy, gave incredibly direct advice on this matter. He said, "If you would be a good reader, read; if a writer, write; but if you would be a man of trust, be a man of your word." This simple, powerful statement links integrity directly to identity. You don't become trustworthy by occasionally telling the truth. You are trustworthy because truthfulness is who you are at your core. For a leader, this means their words and their reality are always aligned. There is no gap between what is said in the boardroom and what is whispered in the hallway, because the leader's character doesn't allow for such a division. This consistency in communication creates an environment where people don't feel the need to constantly read between the lines or second-guess every announcement. They can devote their mental energy to the task at hand, secure in the knowledge that the information they are receiving is reliable. This security is a profound gift, and it inspires a loyalty born of deep respect. Consider the stark contrast between two very different leadership approaches during a company crisis. Imagine a startup facing a critical cash flow problem that threatens its survival. Leader A, fearing mass panic and resignations, calls an all-hands meeting and delivers an overly optimistic, sugar-coated version of events. They talk about temporary headwinds and exciting challenges, downplaying the severity of the situation. For a few weeks, morale might seem stable, but soon, as invoices go unpaid and the reality becomes impossible to ignore, the team's reaction is not just fear about the company's future, but a profound sense of betrayal. Their trust in their leader shatters. The loyalty that existed was conditional on everything going well. It evaporates the moment they realize they were not respected enough to be told the truth. Now picture Leader B. They gather the same team and say, "I need to be direct with all of you. We are in a serious financial situation. Our runway is down to 6 weeks, and if we don't close a major deal within that time, we will not be able to make payroll. Here is the exact numbers. Here is our plan A, B, and C to fix it. I need every single one of you with your specific skills to help us navigate this. It will be difficult and I cannot guarantee success, but I can guarantee I will be transparent with you every step of the way." This approach, while terrifying to deliver, does something remarkable. It treats the team like adults and partners. It honors their intelligence and their right to know the reality of their own professional lives. The anxiety it creates is the anxiety of a shared, known challenge, not the corrosive anxiety of the unknown. The loyalty that forms in response to this kind of radical honesty is fierce and durable. It's the loyalty of a crew that knows their captain trusts them enough to show them the storm on the radar, and in return, they will work tirelessly to help steer the ship. Take a moment to reflect on your own experiences with honesty in leadership. Think about a time when someone in a position of authority, a boss, a teacher, a parent, chose to be uncomfortably candid with you about a difficult situation. Perhaps they admitted a mistake they had made that affected you, or they gave you a piece of critical feedback that was hard to hear but ultimately true. How did that moment of unvarnished truth impact your perception of them? Chances are, even if the news itself was unpleasant, your respect for that person grew. You likely felt a stronger sense of connection and trust, precisely because they had the courage to be honest. Conversely, recall a time when you discovered you had been misled or kept in the dark about something important. The feeling is rarely just about the information itself. It's the deep sense of disrespect that accompanies it, the realization that someone else decided you couldn't handle the truth. That feeling is the absolute killer of loyalty. It shows that clear, honest communication is not just a nice-to-have leadership skill. It is the essential nutrient that allows the roots of true, unbreakable loyalty to grow deep and strong. People stay loyal to those they can count on, day in and day out. This simple truth is the engine of the sixth Stoic principle, a concept that transforms leadership from a series of impressive gestures into a bedrock of predictable reliability. The Stoics didn't admire consistency for its own sake. They saw it as the outward manifestation of an inner life governed by reason. When your actions are dictated by a core set of virtues rather than by shifting moods, external pressures, or convenience, you become predictable in the most profound sense. Followers are never left guessing which version of you they will encounter today, the generous one or the selfish one, the patient one or the short-tempered one. This predictability creates an environment of psychological safety, a rare and valuable space where people know the rules of engagement and trust that they will be applied fairly, regardless of the circumstances. In a world of constant change, this unwavering consistency becomes an anchor, and loyalty naturally grows around it like a sturdy vine. Marcus Aurelius, in the solitude of his campaign tent, constantly reinforced this idea to himself. He wrote, "Let your every action, word, and thought be that of one who can depart from life this very moment." This wasn't a morbid reflection, but a powerful tool for focus. It forced him to ask, if this were my final act, would it be consistent with my principles? Would it be an action I am proud of? This practice ensured that his leadership wasn't a performance for an audience, but a continuous, integrated expression of his character. He understood that trust isn't built in a single grand moment of heroism. It is painstakingly woven, thread by thread, through 1,000 small, consistent acts of integrity. A leader who is virtuous only when it is easy or publicly beneficial is eventually seen as an opportunist, but a leader whose character remains steady whether anyone is watching, whether the market is up or down, whether they are tired or energized, demonstrates an authenticity that commands deep, enduring respect. We can see this principle embodied in the legendary leadership of George Washington. Following the American Revolution, Washington held an almost mythical status among the troops and the public. He could have easily used that influence to seize power, becoming a monarch in all but name, a path many of his officers would have supported. Yet, his consistent commitment to the Republican ideals for which they had fought overrode any personal ambition. He famously resigned his commission as commander-in-chief and returned to his farm at Mount Vernon, an act of breathtaking consistency that stunned the world. He didn't just talk about civic virtue, he lived it unconditionally. This single act, powerful because it was the culmination of a lifetime of similar choices, cemented a loyalty to him and to the new nation that was absolutely unbreakable. People were loyal to Washington because they knew with absolute certainty what he stood for. His character was a fixed point on their moral compass. Now bring this into the rhythm of everyday life. Think about a manager you've known. One manager might be brilliant, charismatic, and full of exciting ideas, but their mood dictates the office atmosphere. They praise you one day and forget your name the next. Their decisions seem arbitrary, changing based on the last person they spoke to. Working for them is exhausting. You're constantly on edge, trying to navigate their emotional weather. Contrast that with a leader who may not be the most dynamic speaker, but whose expectations are clear, whose feedback is fair and predictable, and whose treatment of you never wavers based on their personal feelings. You know exactly where you stand with them, and that reliability allows you to focus your energy on your work, not on office politics. Your loyalty to this consistent leader isn't based on flashy inspiration. It's based on the deep, quiet security that comes from knowing what to expect. You are loyal because they have proven through countless small actions that they are a safe harbor. So take a moment to look around your own world. Who is that person for you? It might not be a famous general or a CEO. It could be a family member who always, without fail, shows up when they say they will. It could be a colleague whose work ethic is the same on a sunny Friday afternoon as it is on a stressful Monday morning. It could be a friend whose advice is always grounded in the same solid values, never bending to gossip or trends. How does that person's steadfastness make you feel about them? Does it make you more likely to trust them with something important? Does it make you want to be more reliable yourself in their honor? That feeling, that pull toward reciprocal trust and commitment, is the silent, powerful force of consistency at work. building bonds of loyalty that can withstand any storm. How often do we forget that loyalty grows in the soil of appreciation? This seventh principle moves beyond the internal virtues of a leader and focuses directly on the human need for recognition, the profound psychological truth that people will rarely remain devoted to a cause or a person if they feel invisible or taken for granted. The Stoics, often mischaracterized as unemotional, placed immense importance on gratitude and the acknowledgement of others. They saw it not as a fluffy emotion, but as a rational duty, a necessary recognition of our interconnectedness. Seneca, who served as an advisor to the emperor, wrote extensively on this, noting that he who receives a benefit with gratitude repays the first installment on his debt. For a Stoic leader, this wasn't about empty flattery or transactional praise. It was about justly acknowledging the role others play in any shared success. This practice of genuine appreciation, offered both in the quiet one-on-one conversation and in the public forum, sends an unambiguous message. Your efforts are seen, your contributions matter, and you are a valued part of this whole. This validation satisfies a deep human craving for significance, transforming a mere member of a group into an invested stakeholder whose loyalty is personally tied to the mission. The power of this practice lies in its dual application, the private word and the public commendation. A private expression of thanks, a specific note, or a sincere conversation makes an individual feel uniquely seen and respected on a personal level. It builds a bond of trust and confidentiality between the leader and the team member. Public recognition, however, serves a different but equally vital purpose. It broadcasts the leader's values to the entire group, showcasing what kind of behavior and contribution is celebrated. It sets a standard, creates positive role models, and fosters a culture where people are motivated to contribute their best, not out of fear of punishment, but in the hope of earning that same genuine respect. This combination is devastatingly effective. The private appreciation secures individual devotion, while the public acknowledgement inspires collective aspiration and reinforces a shared identity. Consider a modern tech company facing a grueling product launch. The team has been working nights and weekends, and the pressure is immense. A leader focused solely on the deadline might just keep pushing, barking orders, and focusing only on the remaining tasks. But a leader practicing this Stoic principle would take a purposeful pause. They might call a team meeting not to discuss deadlines, but to offer recognition. In front of everyone, they could single out a junior developer who found an elegant solution to a critical bug, explaining clearly how her ingenuity saved the project days of work. Then, later that day, the same leader might pull aside a quiet, senior engineer who has been diligently mentoring others and say, "I know you've been staying late to help the new hires get up to speed, and I want you to know that I see that." That kind of selfless support is what makes this team great, and it is deeply appreciated. This dual approach doesn't cost anything but a moment of attention, yet its ROI in loyalty is incalculable. The junior developer feels her specific skill has been validated. The senior engineer feels his character and behind-the-scenes effort have been recognized, and the entire team sees that their leader values both brilliant innovation and humble mentorship. Their commitment to the leader and to each other is instantly renewed, not because the work has gotten easier, but because they feel valued within the struggle. Now turn the lens on your own experience. Cast your mind back and try to pinpoint a moment, whether in your career, in a volunteer organization, or even within your family, when someone made the effort to genuinely appreciate your contribution. Was it a coach who praised your defensive effort in front of the whole team after a loss? A teacher who wrote a thoughtful comment on your paper about a unique idea you had? A parent who thanked you for helping out with a chore without being asked. That feeling, that warm sense of being truly seen and valued for what you specifically brought to the table, is incredibly potent. It likely didn't just make you feel good in that moment. It probably made you want to contribute even more, to live up to the positive recognition you had received. That is the seed of loyalty planted not by authority or fear, but by the simple, profound act of appreciation. It makes you think, for a leader who sees my value that clearly, I'm willing to go the extra mile. The best decisions are made with a cool head and a warm heart. This eighth principle of Stoic leadership gets to the very core of what it means to lead with wisdom rather than just authority. It's the powerful fusion of clear-eyed logic and genuine compassion, a combination that separates reactive managers from truly respected leaders. The Stoics weren't advocating for becoming cold, unfeeling robots. Rather, they championed the idea of letting our highest reasoning self take the wheel, especially when our emotions are screaming from the back seat. Emotions are incredible data points. They tell us what we care about, what we fear, what we desire, but they are terrible drivers. They swerve toward short-term gratification. They overcorrect based on a single event, and they often crash into long-term goals. A leader who can acknowledge the emotion, feel it fully, but then deliberately choose to act based on reasoned principle and the greater good, creates an atmosphere of profound stability and fairness. This isn't suppression, it's sophisticated integration. It tells everyone watching that this is a person who can be trusted with power because they are first in command of themselves. Epictetus, who understood the chaos of human emotion better than most, offered a beautifully simple framework for this. He taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is the essence of dispassionate decision-making. The event itself is neutral. It's our judgment about the event, the story we tell ourselves, that triggers the emotional hurricane. A leader who internalizes this pauses between the event and their response. They ask Stoic questions. Is this within my control? What is the virtuous action here? What serves the long-term health of the team or project? By inserting this moment of reflection, they prevent the contagious spread of panic, anger, or despair. They become a non-anxious presence, and in that calm, rational space, the best possible decisions are born. This ability is what inspires unwavering confidence, because followers know their leader won't be hijacked by a passing mood and make a reckless choice that jeopardizes everything. We can see this principle in its most dramatic form in the leadership of Abraham Lincoln during the American Civil War. After the Union's devastating defeat at the Second Battle of Bull Run, Lincoln was under immense pressure. His generals were failing, public opinion was turning, and the emotional urge to find a scapegoat, to lash out in frustration and anger, must have been overwhelming. A purely emotional leader might have fired General George McClellan on the spot, creating more chaos and instability in the Army's command structure. But Lincoln, who constantly struggled with melancholy yet mastered it to lead, chose a different path. He processed his disappointment privately. He allowed himself to feel the frustration, but he did not let it dictate his action. Instead, he made a reasoned calculation. He knew McClellan was brilliant at organizing and training troops, even if he was hesitant in battle. With the capital threatened, what the army needed most was stability and reorganization. So, despite his personal feelings and the outcry from others, Lincoln made the dispassionate decision to reinstate McClellan to command. This choice, infuriating to some in the moment, was based on a cold assessment of what would best serve the ultimate goal of preserving the Union. His team saw a leader who could subjugate his own anger and disappointment for the strategic good, and that demonstration of supreme self-mastery cemented their loyalty and trust in his judgment far more than any emotional reaction ever could. Now bring this into your own sphere of influence. Think about a time you were in a disagreement, perhaps a heated meeting or a family discussion. Recall the pull of emotion, the desire to win the argument, to prove the other person wrong, to make them feel your frustration. In that moment, the emotional decision is to double down, to raise your voice, to trade logic for scoring points. Now contrast that with the dispassionate, stoic response. It's the deep breath you take before speaking. It's the conscious effort to listen, not to rebut, but to understand. It's asking yourself, what is the true goal here? Is it to be right, or is it to find the best solution and maintain this relationship? When you choose the latter, something remarkable happens. The temperature in the room drops. The other person, disarmed by your calm reason, often begins to mirror it. Trust is built or repaired in that space. People might not always agree with your final decision, but if they see it was reached through a fair and thoughtful process, free from the stains of personal pettiness or reactive anger, they are far more likely to respect it and remain loyal to you as a leader. They learn that your compass always points toward what is right, not what feels good in the moment. Loyalty transcends individuals when it's tied to a purpose greater than oneself. This is the profound shift from leading people for your own goals to leading them toward a shared horizon, a mission that gives meaning to the collective effort. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, which for them meant recognizing our innate social bonds and our role as contributors to the common good. A leader who can articulate and embody a purpose that resonates with this deeper human need doesn't just direct action, they inspire belonging. People are no longer working for a person, they are working with that person for a cause. This transforms the dynamic entirely. Personal allegiance can be fickle, swayed by a bad day or a better offer, but loyalty to a shared purpose is resilient. It becomes part of a person's identity, and to abandon the cause would be to abandon a piece of themselves. This is how movements are built and how empires endure. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this theme, viewing his immense power not as a personal possession but as a tool for a larger duty. He wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This simple, powerful analogy captures the Stoic view of interdependence. The leader, like the bee, thrives only when the entire community thrives. Their personal success is inextricably linked to the success of the whole. A leader who internalizes this mindset stops asking, "How can I get my team to achieve my goals?" and starts asking, "How can I help us achieve our shared mission?" This subtle shift in language and intention is felt immediately. It moves the leader from a position above the team to a position within it, all focused on a common objective. The loyalty that blossoms from this soil is not to the figurehead, but to the shared destiny they are all striving to create. We can see this principle ignite with incredible force in the leadership of Winston Churchill during the Second World War. In 1940, after the disastrous retreat at Dunkirk and with Britain standing alone against the Nazi war machine, the nation was gripped by fear and the very real possibility of invasion. A leader seeking personal allegiance might have tried to bolster his own image or make grand promises, but Churchill understood the need for a shared, transcendent purpose. In his iconic speeches, he didn't ask the British people to be loyal to him. He masterfully framed the struggle in much larger terms. It was a fight for the survival of Christian civilization, for liberty itself, for the future of the world. He spoke of this island nation and our finest hour, using language that wove every citizen into a single, heroic tapestry. He gave them a common identity, the defiant, resilient underdog fighting for all that was good. People weren't just following a prime minister, they were enlisting in a cosmic battle between light and darkness. This powerful sense of shared purpose galvanized a nation, forging a loyalty so fierce that it endured through the blitz and years of unimaginable hardship. The cause became bigger than any one leader, and that is exactly what made their commitment unbreakable. Now, think about this in the context of your own life. It doesn't have to be a world war. Consider a successful non-profit organization. The volunteers aren't there because of a dazzling CEO. They are there because they believe in the mission, feeding the hungry, protecting the environment, educating children. Their loyalty is to the cause, and that collective dedication is what gives the organization its strength and longevity. Or think about a sports team. The most cohesive teams aren't just a collection of talented individuals playing for their own stats. They are a unit bound by the shared purpose of winning a championship together. That goal aligns their efforts, makes them sacrifice for each other, and creates a bond that transcends the individual personalities on the team. So I want you to take a moment and reflect. Can you identify a group or a team you've been a part of where you felt this powerful sense of shared purpose? It could be at work, in your community, or even within your family. What was that common goal that united everyone? How did it make you feel about your role? Chances are you felt a deeper sense of commitment and connection because you were contributing to something larger than yourself. Your loyalty was to the mission, and that made you more willing to persevere through challenges, support your teammates, and give your best effort. That is the alchemy of shared purpose. It transforms individual effort into collective power and builds a loyalty that is far greater than the sum of its parts. How leaders respond to criticism can make or break loyalty. It's a moment of profound vulnerability that reveals the true depth of a leader's character. The Stoic approach to criticism isn't about passive acceptance or indifference. It's an active, disciplined practice of separating the useful signal from the emotional noise. They taught that feedback, even when delivered poorly or with malicious intent, is a form of data. Your emotional reaction, the surge of defensiveness, the sting to your ego is natural, but it's not the part that matters. What matters is your reasoned judgment. Can you extract a kernel of truth from this that will make you better? A leader who masters this practice does something extraordinary. They demonstrate that their commitment to growth and truth is stronger than their attachment to being right. This intellectual humility is incredibly disarming and commands a respect that rigid, defensive authority never can. Followers see a leader who is secure enough to be wrong, and that security makes them feel safe enough to be honest, to innovate, and to take risks, knowing that a mistake won't be met with a character attack but with a learning opportunity. Seneca, who faced immense criticism and envy during his time in Nero's court, wrote extensively on weathering slander with grace. He advised, "There is no such thing as unfair criticism. It either tells you the truth about yourself or the truth about the person giving it." This is a masterful reframing. It transforms criticism from a personal attack into a diagnostic tool. If the critique is true, it's a gift that shows you where to improve. If it's false, it's a window into the insecurities or biases of the critic, and your job is simply to feel pity for their state of mind, not anger. This mindset allows a leader to receive the harshest feedback without flinching, to calmly ask clarifying questions, and to genuinely consider the merit of the points raised. This posture doesn't show weakness, it radiates a formidable inner strength. It tells everyone watching that this leader's self-worth is not so fragile that it can be shattered by a contrary opinion. Consider the very public journey of a leader like Abraham Lincoln. Throughout his presidency, he was savagely criticized by newspapers, politicians, and the public from all sides. He was called a tyrant, a baboon, incompetent, and worse. A less secure leader might have lashed out, used power to silence the presses, or become paralyzed by the torrent of disapproval. But Lincoln often engaged with his critics with a remarkable stoic calm. He famously appointed several of his most vocal political rivals to his cabinet, his team of rivals. Instead of seeing these men as threats to be crushed, he saw them as sources of forceful, valuable feedback. He would listen to their fierce arguments, consider their points, and whenever he found a valid criticism of his own plans, he would adapt. By not taking the criticism personally, he was able to use it to sharpen his strategies and policies. His supporters watched this and saw a leader so confident in his mission that he was willing to be challenged in pursuit of it. Their loyalty wasn't diminished by his willingness to change his mind. It was magnified because they saw his ultimate loyalty was to saving the Union, not to protecting his own ego. Now bring this into your own world. Think about the last time you received difficult feedback, whether at work, in a personal relationship, or even from an online comment. Recall that initial visceral reaction, the heat in your face, the immediate mental list of all the reasons the critic was wrong. That's the ego's automatic defense system kicking in. Now imagine if you had taken a single stoic breath in that moment and asked yourself Seneca's two questions. Is this true, or is this telling me something about the person saying it? How would that have changed your response? Perhaps you would have found a tiny, actionable piece of truth that made you better at your job. Perhaps you would have realized the comment said more about the other person's bad day than your actual performance, allowing you to let it go without another thought. When someone demonstrates that skill in a position of authority, it's unforgettable. It makes you want to work harder for them, to be more honest with them, and to support them more fully, because you know your voice will be heard and your growth will be valued, not just your compliance. What if the strongest loyalty comes from truly caring for those you lead? This question strikes at the very heart of the Stoic leader's purpose, moving beyond strategy and into the realm of genuine human connection. For the Stoics, leadership was not a position of privilege to be exploited, but a duty of service to be honored. They believed that our fundamental nature as social beings calls us to contribute to the welfare of others, and for those in positions of power, this responsibility is magnified. A leader who internalizes this principle shifts their entire focus from, "What can my followers do for me?" to, "What can I do to ensure the flourishing of those in my care?" This isn't about soft-hearted pampering or avoiding difficult decisions. It's about creating the conditions physically, emotionally, and psychologically where people can perform at their best and feel secure in the knowledge that their leader has their well-being as a core priority. When people feel genuinely protected and valued, not as cogs in a machine but as human beings, their allegiance transforms from conditional compliance to unshakable devotion. Marcus Aurelius, shouldering the immense burden of the Roman Empire, constantly reminded himself of this sacred duty in his private writings. He penned, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This simple, profound metaphor encapsulates the Stoic view of interconnectedness. The leader cannot thrive if the community is suffering. Their own success is inextricably linked to the welfare of those they lead. He viewed himself not as a master above his people, but as a servant to the common good, writing, "I am bound to do good to my fellow creatures and bear with them." This sense of duty wasn't a burden but a source of purpose, guiding his every action to ensure justice, provide security, and improve the lives of the citizens of the empire. His reign was marked by efforts to aid the poor, reform laws to be more just, and personally attend to the needs of his troops, not because it was a clever loyalty tactic, but because he believed it was the right and rational thing to do for the health of the whole hive. We can see this principle brought to life in a powerful modern example, the leadership of Abraham Lincoln during the American Civil War. Beyond his political and strategic genius, Lincoln was renowned for his profound empathy and concern for the well-being of the common soldier. He was a constant presence in military hospitals, visiting the wounded, writing letters home for those who couldn't, and sharing in their suffering. He pardoned countless young soldiers sentenced to death for desertion or cowardice, often citing their youth, fear, or family circumstances. These weren't grand, public gestures for show. They were private acts of compassion that revealed his authentic character. His generals often complained that he was too soft-hearted, that he interfered with military discipline. But Lincoln understood something deeper. He knew that the Union wasn't just fighting for a political ideal. It was fighting for the men in the trenches, and those men needed to know their commander-in-chief saw them as human beings, not just as instruments of war. This genuine, demonstrable care for their welfare forged a loyalty that was as deep in the ranks as it was in the cabinet room. Soldiers fought for the Union, but they also fought for the man they called Father Abraham, because they felt in their bones that he was fighting for them. Now, translate this from the grand stage of history to the everyday interactions that define our lives. This principle doesn't require an empire or an army. It operates in every office, every community group, and every home. Think about a manager who notices an employee is consistently staying late and, rather than praising their dedication, sits down with them to understand why. They discover the employee is overwhelmed because they lack a critical software tool or are covering for a vacant position. The leader who prioritizes well-being acts immediately to get that tool or address the staffing gap, removing the source of stress. Contrast this with a manager who only sees the extra hours as increased output and does nothing to alleviate the underlying cause. The first leader builds loyalty by solving a problem. The second sows the seeds of resentment by exploiting a situation. The care is shown not in grand speeches, but in the quiet, consistent actions that prove the leader is paying attention to the human experience of their work. So I want you to take a genuine moment to reflect. Look back on your own journey and identify a person in a position of authority who made you feel truly cared for. Was it a teacher who stayed after school to help you grasp a difficult concept, signaling that your understanding was more important than their free time? Was it a boss who defended your mistake in front of a client and then worked with you privately to learn from it, showing that your growth mattered more than blame? Or perhaps a coach who modified a drill because you were injured, prioritizing your long-term health over that day's practice? How did that specific instance of feeling protected and valued change your relationship with that person? It likely didn't just make you like them. It probably made you want to work harder, to be better, to prove that their faith in you was warranted. That is the powerful, unspoken contract of loyalty that is written not in ink, but in acts of genuine care. It is the realization that when a leader invests in your well-being, you instinctively invest your loyalty in return. Sometimes the most powerful leaders are the ones who don't act powerful. This seemingly paradoxical idea lies at the heart of Stoic humility, a virtue that strips away the trappings of ego and entitlement to reveal a leader who is genuinely human and profoundly relatable. The Stoics saw arrogance not as a sign of strength, but as a fundamental weakness, a desperate performance designed to mask deep insecurities. A leader who feels the need to constantly assert their importance, to remind everyone of their title, or to take credit for every success is, in the Stoic view, a leader who is enslaved to the opinions of others. Their sense of self-worth is tethered to external validation, making them fragile and reactive. True strength, by contrast, comes from an inner security so solid that the leader has nothing to prove. This humility allows them to shine the spotlight on others, to admit mistakes freely, and to approach every interaction without the weight of their own ego blocking the way. It makes them approachable, and that approachability is the gateway to genuine trust and connection. Epictetus, who witnessed the corrosive effects of power firsthand, offered characteristically blunt advice on this matter. He said, "It is impossible for a person to begin to learn what he thinks he already knows." This simple statement exposes the fatal flaw of arrogance. It is a learning disability. A leader who is convinced of their own infallibility closes themselves off to new information, to constructive criticism, and to the valuable perspectives of those around them. Their certainty becomes a prison. Humility, on the other hand, is the engine of growth. It is the conscious admission that you don't have all the answers, that you are a work in progress, and that you can learn from anyone regardless of their rank or station. This intellectual modesty doesn't diminish a leader's authority, it elevates it. It demonstrates a confidence that is rooted not in never being wrong, but in the constant pursuit of being better. We find a stunning historical example of this principle in the life of George Washington. After leading the American colonies to victory in the Revolutionary War, Washington held virtually unparalleled power and popularity. Many of his officers and supporters fully expected him to seize control, to become a new kind of American monarch, a path countless victorious generals throughout history had taken. The temptation to hold onto that power must have been immense. Yet, in a move that stunned the world, Washington appeared before the Continental Congress and voluntarily resigned his commission as commander-in-chief, handing authority back to the civilian government. He didn't make a grand speech about his own magnanimity. He simply did what he believed was right for the young republic. This act of breathtaking humility, of relinquishing power when he could have so easily consolidated it, did not weaken him. It made him a legend. It proved that his commitment was to the ideal of democracy, not to his own personal glory. The loyalty and trust this earned from the American people was instantaneous and absolute, paving the way for his unanimous election as the first president. His humility wasn't a weakness, it was the ultimate demonstration of his strength and character. Now bring this concept out of the history books and into the modern workplace. Imagine two different managers. The first is always the smartest person in the room, quick to interrupt, eager to take credit for the team's successes, and never to blame for its failures. They dominate conversations and make their subordinates feel small. The second manager listens more than they speak. They actively seek out opinions, publicly praise their team's contributions, and say, "I was wrong," or "I don't know, what do you think?" When the situation calls for it, which leader would you be more loyal to? Which environment would inspire you to give your best, most creative work? The answer is obvious. The humble leader creates a culture of psychological safety where people feel empowered to take risks and voice ideas without fear of being belittled. Their lack of pretense signals that they value truth and results over their own ego, and in return, they earn not just compliance but deep, heartfelt commitment. So I want you to take a personal inventory of the leaders you've known. Think beyond famous figures and consider a coach, a teacher, a past boss, or even a family member. Can you identify someone who led with a quiet confidence, who put the needs of the group ahead of their own desire for recognition? How did their humility make you feel in their presence? Did it make you want to support them more? Did it make you trust their judgment because you knew it wasn't clouded by vanity? That feeling of respect, that pull toward a person of genuine modesty, is the silent, powerful force of humility at work. It forges a bond of loyalty that flashy arrogance can never replicate, because it is built on the solid ground of mutual respect and authentic human connection. What if the secret to loyalty is giving it away first? This provocative question lies at the heart of the 13th Stoic principle: flipping the traditional script on leadership and control. The Stoics understood that true influence isn't about tightening your grip, but about having the courage to open your hands and trust in the reason and capability of those around you. They believed every individual possesses a share of divine reason, and a leader's role isn't to dictate, but to create the conditions for that inherent potential to flourish. This philosophy champions autonomy not as a loss of authority, but as its highest expression. When you empower others with genuine trust and independence, you send a powerful, unspoken message. I believe in your judgment. I value your competence. I see you as a partner, not just a subordinate. This psychological shift transforms the dynamic from one of dependency to one of mutual respect, and it is in that fertile ground of respect that the deepest roots of loyalty take hold. Seneca, who served as an advisor to the often volatile Emperor Nero, wrote extensively about the importance of this trusting delegation. In his letters, he argued that constantly micromanaging others is not just inefficient, it is a form of arrogance and a profound waste of energy. He suggested that a wise leader must allow those you teach to do things for themselves, recognizing that real growth and commitment come from the freedom to act, to make decisions, and even to make manageable mistakes. For Seneca, this wasn't merely a management technique, it was a reflection of a deeper Stoic trust in the natural order and the cultivated virtue of individuals. A leader who hoards all decision-making power and approval signals a fundamental lack of faith in their team's abilities, which ultimately breeds resentment and passive compliance. But a leader who delegates meaningful responsibility demonstrates a trust that is both empowering and inspiring, encouraging people to rise to the occasion and become stewards of the shared mission. We can witness this principle in action through the leadership of Ernest Shackleton during his legendary Antarctic expedition on the Endurance. When his ship was trapped and eventually crushed by pack ice, Shackleton faced a seemingly hopeless situation with his crew stranded in the most inhospitable environment on Earth. A controlling leader might have tried to command every minute detail, fostering dependence and panic, but Shackleton did the opposite. He empowered his men with autonomy. He entrusted specific, critical tasks to different crew members based on their skills, assigning one to hunt for seals, another to manage the dogs, others to be in charge of morale or scientific observations. He gave them ownership. This wasn't abdication, it was strategic trust. By distributing responsibility, he gave each man a vital role to play in their collective survival, making them feel capable, valued, and indispensably invested in the outcome. This empowerment in the face of catastrophe forged a loyalty so powerful that every single member of the expedition survived the 2-year ordeal, and many followed Shackleton on subsequent journeys. Their devotion was a direct result of the profound trust he had placed in them when they needed it most. Now, translate this from the ice of Antarctica to the modern rhythm of an office, a classroom, or a community project. Consider a manager overseeing a critical client presentation. One approach is to dictate every slide, script every talking point, and require approval for the smallest change. This might ensure a specific, controlled outcome in the short term, but it also creates a team of anxious executors who feel no real ownership. Contrast this with a leader who outlines the core objective and the key messages, but then trusts their team to develop the creative concepts, design the slides, and practice their delivery. This leader is available for guidance but doesn't demand control. The team, feeling trusted with a significant responsibility, naturally invests more creativity, effort, and pride into the work. They aren't just building a presentation for their boss, they are building their presentation. The success, when it comes, is shared, and the loyalty to the leader who gave them that opportunity is immense. So take a moment to turn this inward. Cast your mind back through your own experiences. Can you recall a specific time when someone in a position of authority took a real chance on you? Perhaps it was a teacher who gave you the lead in a school play, a boss who put you in charge of a project despite your junior title, or a mentor who encouraged you to run with an idea that was entirely your own. Remember that feeling, the mix of nervousness and excitement, the powerful sense of being seen as capable. How did that trust affect your motivation? Did you find yourself working harder, thinking more creatively, and feeling a deeper sense of commitment to that person, precisely because they had shown such faith in you? That powerful, positive pressure to honor someone's trust is one of the most effective motivators we have. It doesn't just build better outcomes, it builds more loyal and capable people, creating a virtuous cycle of growth and mutual respect that elevates everyone involved. In chaos, a steady hand is what people remember and rally behind. This principle cuts to the very core of Stoic leadership because pressure doesn't just test a leader's skill, it reveals their fundamental character. The Stoics weren't advocating for a robotic suppression of emotion. They were masters of channeling it. Their practices were designed to create a crucial gap between the external event and their internal response, a space where reason could take the wheel instead of panic. They trained for crisis not by avoiding stress, but by mentally rehearsing it, by premeditating potential adversities so that when they arrived, they felt familiar, even expected. This mental preparation is what allows a leader to access a deep well of calm when everyone else is reaching for the surface. That calm isn't perceived as indifference, it's seen as a profound strength. It signals to everyone watching that the situation, however dire, is manageable because the person in charge is still managing themselves. This reliability in the storm is the ultimate reassurance, and it forges a loyalty that is built on the unshakable confidence that this leader will not break. Marcus Aurelius, constantly navigating wars, plagues, and political intrigues, turned to his journal to reinforce this exact mindset. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This is the Stoic mantra for composure. It's the conscious redirecting of focus from the swirling chaos you cannot control to the unwavering calm that you can cultivate within. For a leader, this internal shift is everything. A crisis often involves countless uncontrollable variables: market crashes, unexpected betrayals, natural disasters. A leader who frantically tries to control the uncontrollable will appear scattered and desperate, amplifying everyone's anxiety. But a leader who focuses their energy exclusively on their own reasoned response, their next rational decision, and their calm demeanor becomes a steady pivot point around which the entire team can reorganize. Their composure is a silent communication that the situation is being handled, which allows others to stop fearing and start functioning. We can see this principle enacted with breathtaking clarity in the historical example of Julius Caesar's infamous crossing of the Rubicon River. This wasn't just a military maneuver, it was an act of treason that plunged the Roman Republic into civil war. The moment his army crossed that shallow river, Caesar was irrevocably committed to a path that could end in absolute victory or his own crucifixion. The pressure on him was unimaginable. His decision would determine the fate of Rome and everyone in his army. Ancient sources describe him pausing for a moment of reflection, but they notably do not describe panic, hesitation, or frantic urgency. He displayed a calculated, almost serene composure. He then delivered a simple, steady speech to his troops, not about the riches they would win, but about restoring the dignity of the Roman people. His calm assurance in the face of such colossal risk was a powerful contagion. It transformed his soldiers' anxiety into resolve. They weren't following a man who was gambling. They were following a man who was so confidently in command of himself that they felt confident in his command of them. His composure under that extreme pressure solidified a loyalty so fierce that his legions would follow him for years through a brutal civil war. Now, bring this concept out of the history books and into the reality of a modern workplace. Imagine a critical system failure that takes a company's website offline during its biggest sales event of the year. Panic is the natural, default response. One type of leader might burst into the room, their own anxiety palpable, yelling questions and assigning blame. This reaction is like throwing gasoline on a fire. It legitimizes the panic and sends everyone's stress levels soaring, making clear-headed problem-solving nearly impossible. Now picture a leader who practices stoic composure. They walk in calmly, acknowledge the severity of the situation with a level tone, and then systematically begin to ask questions. What do we know for certain? What's our first step to contain the issue? Who are the key people we need right now? Their calm is not a lack of concern, it's a focused and purposeful energy. The team, seeing their leader's steady hand, instinctively mirrors that calm. Their heart rate slow, their thinking clears, and they become capable of executing the solution. The loyalty built in that moment is immense because the team has just witnessed their leader being their best self when things were at their worst. So I want you to take a moment and reach into your own memory. Can you recall a specific, high-pressure situation where someone's calm demeanor fundamentally changed the outcome? Maybe it was a doctor in an emergency room who spoke in a quiet, measured tone that made you believe everything would be okay. Perhaps it was a parent who remained steady during a family crisis, their presence alone providing a sense of safety, or a colleague during a client meltdown who didn't get defensive but listened calmly and de-escalated the entire situation. How did that person's composure affect your trust in them? It likely didn't just make you appreciate them in the moment. It probably built a lasting reservoir of respect and confidence that influenced your relationship from that point forward. You knew on a visceral level that this was a person you could count on when the pressure was on, and that is a truth that forges loyalty stronger than steel. Why do we feel more loyal to those who give without asking anything in return? This question points to a profound psychological truth that the Stoics understood intuitively. Generosity offered without strings attached is one of the most powerful catalysts for genuine, unbreakable loyalty. For the Stoics, kindness wasn't just a nice personality trait. It was a rational duty, a fundamental expression of our shared humanity. They believed that we are all part of a single, interconnected community, and to help another person is simply to help a part of the whole to which we also belong. This perspective transforms generosity from a transaction, "I'll do this for you if you do that for me," into a pure expression of character. When a leader operates from this place, their giving is not a calculated investment seeking a return. It is a natural outflow of their virtue. This absence of ulterior motive is felt immediately. It communicates a message of pure, unadulterated care. I am helping you because your well-being matters to me, not because your productivity matters to me. That distinction is everything. It builds a bond of trust that is immune to the fluctuations of the market or the ups and downs of performance, because it is rooted in something far deeper and more human. Seneca, in his profound work on benefits, delves deeply into this very idea, exploring the proper way to both give and receive. He cuts straight to the heart of the matter, stating, "He who gives a benefit with a sigh or with a look of contempt, though he may fulfill the letter, yet loses the spirit." For Seneca, the true value of a gift lies not in its monetary worth, but in the spirit and the intention with which it is given. A benefit given grudgingly or with an air of superiority is no benefit at all. It is a debt, a burden that demeans the receiver. But a gift given freely, with genuine joy and a desire to ease another's burden, is a powerful affirmation of their worth. This is the Stoic ideal of generosity. It should be as natural and effortless as a vine producing grapes, expecting nothing in return from the world but to fulfill its purpose. A leader who embodies this doesn't keep a mental ledger of favors owed. They give because it is in their nature to contribute to the flourishing of those around them. This consistent, selfless action creates a powerful gravitational pull of loyalty, as people naturally feel a deep desire to support and protect someone who has so clearly demonstrated that their support is unconditional. We can see this principle create an empire of loyalty in the actions of the Roman Emperor Trajan. Renowned for his expansive public building programs, he didn't just construct monuments to his own glory. He invested heavily in infrastructure that improved the daily lives of ordinary citizens, aqueducts to bring clean water, roads to facilitate trade, and public buildings for community life. But his generosity was most powerfully felt on a personal level. He established a famous welfare program, the Alimenta, which provided state funds for the upbringing and education of poor children throughout Italy. This wasn't a short-term bribe for popularity. It was a long-term investment in the human capital of the empire, expecting nothing directly back from those children. He also had a reputation for personal accessibility, often holding public audiences where citizens could bring their grievances directly to him, and he was known to provide financial help to struggling senators to save them from dishonor, often doing so anonymously. This pattern of large-scale and small-scale, public and private generosity, all given without any public demand for gratitude, forged a loyalty to Trajan that was unparalleled. He was so beloved that the Senate officially bestowed upon him the title Optimus Princeps, the best ruler. His legacy wasn't built on fear, but on the countless acts of support that made people feel truly cared for by their leader. Now translate this ancient virtue into the context of a modern workplace or community. Imagine a project manager whose team is burning the midnight oil to meet an impossible deadline. One leader might order pizza for the team, making a show of it and subtly implying that this gift obligates them to work even harder. The gesture feels transactional. Now imagine a different leader. This one stays late with the team, not micromanaging but genuinely helping where they can. At the end of a particularly grueling night, they don't say a word. The next morning, they arrive with a personalized gift for each team member, not something generic, but something that shows they pay attention. A specific book for the developer who loves a particular author, a high-quality coffee blend for the designer who is always complaining about the office brew, and a handwritten note for each person acknowledging their specific contribution. The gifts are given quietly, with no speech, no expectation of thanks, and certainly no implication that it means more overtime is expected. The message is clear: I see you, I appreciate you as a person, and this is for you. The loyalty inspired by this second Stoic approach is absolute and fervent. The team isn't just working for a paycheck, they are working for a leader who values them beyond their output. So I want you to take a quiet moment and look back on your own life. Can you recall a specific instance where someone offered you help or gave you a gift that came with absolutely no strings attached? Perhaps it was a mentor who spent hours coaching you without ever adding it to your billable hours. Maybe it was a friend who showed up to help you move without you even having to ask, or a colleague who covered for you during a family emergency without ever mentioning it again. How did that act of pure, unexpected generosity make you feel about that person? It likely did more than just make you grateful. It probably built a deep, enduring sense of connection and commitment. You felt a genuine desire to reciprocate that goodness, not out of obligation, but out of a sincere admiration for their character. That is the silent, powerful alchemy of selfless giving. It doesn't just create debtors, it creates devoted allies and lifelong loyalists. True loyalty is freely given, never extracted. This principle draws a clear line in the sand between leadership that commands respect and domination that demands obedience. The Stoics understood that human beings are rational creatures, endowed with the capacity for reason and choice. To attempt to override that capacity with brute force or threats isn't just morally questionable, it's a strategic error that guarantees long-term failure. Coercion might secure compliance in the short term, but it does so at a terrible cost. It plants the seeds of deep resentment, passive aggression, and the silent hope for the leader's downfall. The moment the threat is removed, the loyalty evaporates. Persuasion, by contrast, operates on a completely different level. It is an invitation, not a command. It respects the other person's autonomy by engaging their reason and their emotions, presenting a case so compelling that they choose to align their will with yours. This voluntary alignment is the only kind that lasts because it is rooted in a shared understanding and a mutual respect that no amount of force can ever replicate. Epictetus, who knew the bitter reality of slavery and unchecked power, offered timeless guidance on this distinction. He taught, if you would be a good leader, remember to use persuasion rather than force. For people are won over more by reason than by threats. This advice cuts to the heart of Stoic psychology. A threat attacks a person's sense of safety, triggering their base instincts for fear and self-preservation. Reason, however, appeals to their higher nature, their intellect, their values, their desire for what is good and right. When you persuade someone, you are not imposing your will upon them. You are inviting them to see the world through your eyes and to arrive at the same conclusion themselves. This process is inherently dignifying. It tells the other person, I value your mind enough to present my case to it. I believe you are capable of understanding this. That respect for their intelligence and autonomy is what transforms a subordinate into a willing partner and a directive into a shared goal. We can see this principle masterfully applied in one of history's most pivotal moments of persuasion, Abraham Lincoln's approach to his cabinet regarding the Emancipation Proclamation. By the summer of 1862, Lincoln had become convinced that abolishing slavery in the rebel states was a military and moral necessity, but he was surrounded by a cabinet of powerful, strong-willed men, several of whom were vehemently opposed to such a radical move. They feared it would push the border states into the Confederacy, anger the Union's racist allies, and be seen as a desperate act of a losing government. Lincoln could have invoked his wartime powers as commander-in-chief and simply issued the proclamation by decree. That would have been coercion legal, perhaps, but still a top-down imposition of will that would have fractured his administration. Instead, he chose persuasion. He spent months patiently listening to their objections, acknowledging their fears, and then meticulously dismantling each argument with logic and evidence. He framed the proclamation not as a wild abolitionist dream, but as a precise military strategy to undermine the Confederate economy and encourage enslaved people to flee to Union lines. He appealed to their sense of history, their patriotism, and their ultimate desire to win the war. When he finally called the official cabinet meeting to sign the document, he had already won them over, not by pulling rank, but by winning the argument. Their support was genuine, not extracted, and it was crucial for the proclamation's successful implementation and defense. Now, bring this concept out of the 19th century and into your daily life. Consider the difference between a parent who barks orders at a teenager, "Clean your room now because I said so," and one who sits down and explains the reasoning. I know your room is your space and I respect that, but we have family visiting tomorrow, and having a tidy home is a way we show respect for our guests and create a comfortable environment for everyone. It also helps you practice the organizational skills you'll need when you're on your own at college. Can we work on it together for 20 minutes? The first approach invites a power struggle. The second, while still maintaining authority, invites cooperation. It persuades by connecting the action to shared values of respect, preparation, and family. The chore becomes a choice to participate in those values, not just blind obedience. So take a moment to reflect on your own experiences with persuasion and force. Can you recall a time when someone you respected truly persuaded you of something? They didn't just tell you what to think. They walked you through their logic, they understood your reservations, and they helped you see a new perspective so clearly that you adopted it as your own. How did that process make you feel about that person and the idea itself? Contrast that with a time when you were simply forced to comply with a rule or a decision you didn't understand or agree with. Even if you outwardly obeyed, what did it do to your internal sense of commitment and respect? The chasm between those two feelings is the entire difference between a loyalty that is given and a compliance that is rented, and it is a chasm that defines the ultimate success or failure of any leader in any arena. Rarely does haste build anything lasting, especially loyalty. In a world that often celebrates speed and immediate results, the Stoic virtue of patience stands as a quiet but formidable form of strength, a deliberate choice to prioritize long-term integrity over short-term gratification. For the Stoics, patience wasn't about passive waiting. It was an active exercise in wisdom and self-control, a recognition that all meaningful growth, whether in a person, a project, or a relationship, unfolds according to its own timeline. A leader who embodies this patience sends a powerful, reassuring message to their followers. Our goals are important, but how we achieve them matters just as much. This measured approach creates a space for thoughtful consideration, where decisions are made from a place of clarity rather than urgency, and where people feel they have the room to learn, experiment, and even fail without the immediate pressure of a knee-jerk reaction. This environment of considered guidance builds a deep and resilient trust because it proves that the leader's commitment is not to the quickest outcome, but to the best one. Marcus Aurelius, constantly navigating the immense pressures of war and governance, regularly turned to this idea in his private meditations as an anchor. He counseled himself, remember that patience is a remedy for every affliction. It is the art of allowing things to unfold rather than forcing them to break. This framing is crucial, patience as an art, a skilled practice, not a weakness. He saw impatience as a form of forcing, a violent struggle against the natural current of events that often leads to more breakage and chaos. The patient leader, by contrast, understands the rhythm of progress. They know that pressuring a team for a premature solution often yields inferior results, that forcing a confrontation before people are ready to listen only deepens divisions, and that trusting a process, even a slow one, often leads to more durable and widely supported outcomes. This artistry in timing and temperance demonstrates a profound respect for the complexities of any endeavor and for the people involved in it, fostering a loyalty built on the security of steady, unhurried leadership. We can witness the profound impact of this principle in the leadership of Nelson Mandela during the arduous transition from apartheid in South Africa. After 27 years in prison, a lesser man would have emerged with every right to be impatient, to demand immediate and sweeping change, to seek retribution. Such an approach would have almost certainly plunged the nation into a bloody civil war, but Mandela understood the Stoic art of allowing things to unfold. He practiced a breathtaking patience, choosing to engage in years of painstaking negotiation with the very government that had imprisoned him. He knew that true, lasting reconciliation couldn't be forced. It had to be built, brick by painstaking brick, through dialogue, compromise, and the gradual building of trust between bitterly opposed factions. His willingness to move slowly, to listen to fears on all sides, and to prioritize a stable, peaceful future over a swift, violent revolution, earned him not just the loyalty of his followers, but the eventual respect of his former enemies. His patience was the key that turned the lock without breaking it, demonstrating that the strongest leaders are often those who have the inner fortitude to master the pace of their own ambitions. Now, bring this concept into the rhythm of your own daily interactions. Think about a manager overseeing a talented but inexperienced new hire. An impatient leader might hover, micromanage every task, and express frustration at the pace of learning, ultimately stifling the employee's confidence and creativity. Their loyalty would be based on fear of making a mistake. Contrast this with a patient leader who sets clear expectations but provides the space to learn. They offer guidance when asked, allow for small missteps as part of the growth process, and focus on long-term development over immediate perfection. This employee, feeling trusted and given room to breathe, will likely develop not only greater skill but also a fierce loyalty to the leader who invested in their growth with such calm consideration. The patients communicated a belief in their potential, and that belief inspires a desire to meet and exceed that potential. So I want you to take a moment and look back on your own journey. Can you identify someone whose patience made a significant impact on you? Perhaps it was a teacher who spent extra time explaining a concept until the light bulb finally went off for you, never showing a hint of irritation. Maybe it was a parent who patiently guided you through a difficult emotional time without rushing you to get over it. Or a mentor who allowed a project you were leading to develop at its own natural pace, providing support without seizing control. How did their demonstration of patience affect your feelings toward them? Did it make you feel valued, respected, and more secure? That deep sense of safety and respect is the fertile ground in which the most genuine and unshakable loyalty grows, proving that some of the strongest bonds are woven not in the frantic rush of action, but in the quiet, steady space of patience. The most compelling leaders are those who master themselves first. This foundational truth reveals a profound psychological reality. We are far more inclined to follow those who have visibly conquered their own inner battles than those who simply command us to win ours. For the Stoics, self-discipline was not a harsh form of self-denial, but the ultimate expression of personal freedom. It is the practiced ability to align your actions with your deepest values, regardless of passing moods, fleeting desires, or external temptations. A leader who embodies this kind of discipline does not need to lecture on accountability or effort. Their entire being becomes a living lesson in it. They set a silent, unwavering standard that speaks louder than any motivational speech, creating a powerful cultural tone where excellence is not demanded, but naturally inspired through the magnetic pull of consistent example. This visible self-mastery generates a loyalty rooted in genuine admiration because followers are not just obeying a boss, they are choosing to emulate a role model. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and understood the true meaning of mastering one's own mind, placed this idea at the very center of his teachings. He declared, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This simple, devastatingly clear statement reframes leadership entirely. Before you can hope to guide others, you must first be in complete command of your own judgments, your reactions, and your choices. A leader who is a slave to their own anger, their laziness, or their appetites is a contradiction in terms. They are being led, not leading. Epictetus argued that this self-command is our highest duty, because it is the prerequisite for any other virtuous action. When a leader's internal state is ordered and disciplined, it creates a ripple effect of calm and focus throughout their entire team. Followers see a person who is not buffeted by the chaos of their own emotions, and in that stability, they find a model for their own conduct and a compelling reason to dedicate their best efforts. We see this principle etched into history with stunning clarity in the life of George Washington. Long before he became the father of a nation, he embarked on a lifelong project of rigorous self-construction. As a young man, he meticulously copied out 110 rules of civility and decent behavior, internalizing a code of conduct that governed everything from his table manners to his management of temper. This was not for show, it was a private discipline aimed at forging a character worthy of respect. As a military commander, he famously shared the hardships of his troops at Valley Forge, enduring the same brutal cold and scant rations. He didn't do this because it was easy, but because it was right. His discipline demanded it. His men didn't see a distant general in a warm tent. They saw a leader whose personal standards of endurance were higher than those he set for anyone else. This profound example did more to boost morale and cement loyalty than any promise of payment or victory ever could. They were loyal to the man because the man had first been loyal to his own principles. Now bring this concept out of the 18th century and into the rhythm of a modern workplace. Imagine two different managers. The first preaches the importance of punctuality, but consistently rolls into meetings 5 minutes late. They advocate for a healthy work-life balance but are always sending emails at 11 o'clock at night, creating an unspoken expectation. Their team will likely comply with the rules, but their loyalty will be thin and transactional, based on fear of reprimand rather than genuine respect. Now consider a second leader. They are impeccably prepared for every meeting, having done the reading they assigned. They leave the office on time to be with their family and encourage their team to do the same, modeling the balance they promote. When a crisis hits, they are the first to arrive and the last to leave, not with frantic energy but with a calm, disciplined focus. Their team watches this, and a powerful, unspoken message is received. This leader's words and actions are one. Their discipline is authentic. This consistency builds a loyalty that is deep and organic. People will work tirelessly for this leader not because they have to, but because they want to live up to the standard that is being so clearly demonstrated. So I want you to take a personal moment and look around your own world. Think beyond famous historical figures and consider the people in your own life. Can you identify someone whose personal discipline you genuinely admire? It might be a family member who has maintained a healthy lifestyle for decades through daily, consistent choices. It could be a colleague who approaches every single task, no matter how small, with the same level of meticulous care and focus. Or perhaps a friend who has patiently built a business or a skill through years of dedicated practice without ever cutting corners. How does witnessing that daily discipline make you feel about that person? Does it increase your trust in them? Does it make you value their opinion more highly? That feeling of respect, that quiet admiration for someone who has clearly mastered themselves, is the silent, powerful engine of the most durable loyalty there is. It makes you want to be better simply by being in their presence. Loyalty knows no hierarchy when respect is given freely to all. This principle dismantles the artificial barriers of title, rank, and social standing to reveal a profound Stoic truth, that every single person possesses an inherent worth simply by virtue of their shared humanity. The Stoics believed in a concept called sympatheia, the idea that the entire universe is a single, interconnected living organism, and every individual is a vital part of that whole. From this perspective, showing disrespect to anyone, regardless of their station, is like a foot deciding it's more important than the hand and trying to cut it off. It's an irrational act of self-harm that weakens the entire body. For a leader, this philosophy translates into a radical form of egalitarian respect. It means the janitor who cleans the office late at night is accorded the same genuine courtesy and consideration as the board chairman. This isn't a calculated strategy. It's a reflection of a deep-seated belief that dignity is not earned by position, but is a birthright of every person. When a leader operates from this core belief, it creates a cultural tidal wave. People don't just feel respected, they feel seen, valued, and fundamentally safe, which is the most fertile ground for loyalty to grow. Seneca, who moved in the highest circles of Roman power as an advisor to Nero, was particularly forceful on this point. He wrote, "I shall respect all men, not because it is a popular thing to do, but because it is a just thing to do." He argued that our treatment of others, especially those who cannot offer us anything in return, is the truest measure of our own character. He cautioned powerfully against the arrogance of status, noting that a person who is rude to a server or dismissive of a subordinate reveals not their own importance, but a deep insecurity and a flawed character. For Seneca, the rational, virtuous person understands that the trappings of power, the fancy titles, the expensive clothes, are external indifference. They have no bearing on a person's moral worth. The real leader is the one who can look past these superficialities and connect with the rational soul within every individual. This consistent demonstration of respect, offered freely to all, builds an allegiance that is both broad and deep because it is not conditional on what someone can do for you, but is unconditional based on who they are. A powerful historical example of this principle in action can be found in the leadership of the Roman Emperor Vespasian. Unlike many emperors who were born into privilege, Vespasian came from a modest provincial family and never lost the common touch. He was famously approachable and known for his dry wit and lack of pretense. Ancient historians recount how he would walk the streets of Rome without a massive, intimidating guard, engaging in conversation with ordinary citizens, merchants, and soldiers. He treated everyone with the same direct, unceremonious manner, but his respect wasn't just performative, it was practical. When he needed to raise funds to rebuild Rome after a civil war, he famously imposed a tax on public urinals. When his son Titus expressed disgust at the undignified nature of this revenue, Vespasian held a coin from the first payment to his son's nose and said, "See, my son, if it has no smell." This anecdote perfectly captures his Stoic equanimity. He saw utility and value where others saw only status and disgrace. His consistent, egalitarian respect for people and practicality, regardless of their class, earned him immense popularity and loyalty from the common people and the army, stabilizing his reign and allowing him to leave a legacy of peace and prosperity. Now translate this ancient virtue into the modern rhythm of a corporate office, a hospital, or a school. Imagine two different leaders. The first marches through the hallway, eyes forward, acknowledging only their direct reports, perhaps offering a curt nod to an assistant, but never truly seeing the intern fetching coffee or the security guard holding the door. Their respect is hierarchical, transactional, and it is felt as such. The second leader makes a conscious effort to learn the names of the cleaning staff, asks the new intern for their opinion in a meeting, and genuinely listens to the concerns of a junior employee with the same attentiveness they would offer a senior vice president. This leader's respect is universal. The message it sends is seismic. In this organization, everyone matters. This doesn't mean everyone has the same decision-making authority, but it does mean everyone is afforded the same fundamental human dignity. The loyalty this inspires is not confined to the top of the org chart. It permeates the entire structure, creating a cohesive, resilient, and fiercely dedicated community. So I want you to take a quiet moment and turn this lens on your own life. Cast your mind back and try to isolate a specific memory. Can you recall a time when someone in a position of authority, a boss, a teacher, a community leader, treated you with genuine, unmistakable respect at a moment when you held very little power or status? Perhaps you were the new kid at school, the lowest-ranking person on a team, or just someone who felt invisible. How did that moment of being truly seen and respected, regardless of your role, make you feel? Did it change your level of commitment? Did it make you want to work harder, not out of obligation, but out of a deep-seated desire to honor the respect they had shown you? That powerful, often unspoken feeling is the very essence of this principle. It proves that the most powerful way to command loyalty is not to demand it from a position above, but to offer it freely to everyone from the ground up. What if the strongest bonds are forged in the fires of forgiveness? This question points to a profound paradox of leadership, that true strength is often revealed not in the act of punishment, but in the courageous choice to pardon. The Stoics approached forgiveness not as a sentimental overlooking of wrongs, but as a rational, strategic practice of emotional hygiene. They believed that holding onto a grudge was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. It was a self-inflicted wound that clouded judgment, consumed mental energy, and trapped a leader in the past. For them, clemency was a form of liberation, a way to surgically remove the emotional weight of a transgression so that everyone could move forward, unburdened and focused on the future. A leader who masters this art creates an environment of psychological safety where people are not paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake. They understand that innovation, growth, and bold action require the freedom to occasionally fail, and that freedom can only exist where forgiveness is a real and present possibility. This forward-looking atmosphere doesn't just prevent resentment, it actively encourages commitment because followers know their leader's primary concern is progress, not punishment. Marcus Aurelius, who faced constant betrayals and political intrigues, frequently wrestled with this idea in his private meditations. He wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This is the ultimate Stoic reframe of forgiveness. It's not about excusing bad behavior. It's about refusing to let someone else's poor character degrade your own. By choosing not to retaliate or harbor bitterness, a leader protects their own virtue and maintains their capacity for rational action. Aurelius saw the folly of dwelling on past wrongs, reminding himself that to be angry is to be a slave to the person who offended you. For a leader, this emotional independence is a superpower. It allows them to assess situations and people based on their current actions and potential, not on past grievances. This ability to reset the clock, to give people a genuine chance to improve, communicates a powerful belief in redemption and growth that inspires fierce loyalty. People will walk through fire for a leader who sees the best in them, even after they have shown their worst. A stunning historical example of this principle in action is the leadership of Abraham Lincoln following the American Civil War. As the conflict drew to a close, the nation was fractured by unimaginable bloodshed and bitterness. Many in the North, including powerful members of Lincoln's own cabinet, called for severe punishment of the Southern secessionists' trials for treason, the confiscation of lands, and harsh military occupation. This path of vengeance would have almost certainly perpetuated the cycle of hatred and guaranteed generations of further conflict, but Lincoln championed a different vision. In his second inaugural address with the war still raging, He set the tone for reconciliation, famously urging the nation to proceed with malice toward none, with charity for all. His plan for reconstruction was not about punishment, but about binding the nation's wounds and swiftly reintegrating the southern states back into the Union with dignity. He offered amnesty to most Confederates who would swear an oath of loyalty. While his assassination tragically cut this work short, his philosophy of forgiveness had already laid a foundation. His approach transformed former adversaries into citizens, and in doing so, he began to build a loyalty to a unified nation that a victory of pure force could never have achieved. He understood that the war had been won on the battlefield, but the peace could only be won in the human heart through the difficult, courageous work of forgiveness. Now, bring this concept from the national stage into the dynamics of a modern team or organization. Imagine a talented employee who makes a catastrophic error that costs the company a major client. A leader operating from a place of grudge might forever define that employee by that single failure, limiting their responsibilities, excluding them from key projects, and subtly ensuring they are never trusted again. This creates a culture of fear where no one dares to take risks, and the employee's loyalty evaporates into quiet resentment. Now picture a Stoic leader. They address the mistake directly and hold the employee accountable, but then they do the harder work. They truly forgive. They sit down with the employee and say, "That was a serious error, and we've discussed the consequences. But it is now in the past. What did you learn from it? How will it make you better? I'm giving you my full trust again on this next project because I believe in your ability to grow." This act of deliberate forgiveness is a powerful investment. The employee, given this second chance, will likely become one of the most dedicated, careful, and loyal members of the team, not out of guilt, but out of profound gratitude for the opportunity to redeem themselves. So I want you to take a personal moment and look back on your own relationships. Can you recall a specific time when someone you had wronged or someone who had authority over you chose to truly forgive you? Not just to pay lip service to the idea, but to genuinely release the debt and move forward without holding it over your head. How did that act of grace make you feel about that person? Did it lift a weight off your shoulders? Did it create a sense of obligation, not in a negative way, but in a positive desire to honor their faith in you? That profound sense of relief and renewed commitment is the very engine of loyalty that forgiveness creates. It proves that sometimes the most powerful way to secure someone's future dedication is to courageously let go of the past. Loyalty grows in environments where every voice matters. This principle moves beyond simply allowing people to speak. It's about the active, intentional cultivation of a space where diverse perspectives are not just tolerated, but genuinely sought after and valued. The Stoics, despite their reputation for inner fortitude, were deeply committed to the practice of rational discourse. They believed that truth and wisdom were not the sole property of any one individual, but could be unearthed through the collective process of questioning, challenging, and refining ideas together. For a leader, this translates into a humble admission that you do not have a monopoly on good ideas. By systematically inviting input and, more importantly, demonstrating that you are truly listening, you do something remarkable. You transform followers into collaborators. This act of inclusion is a profound form of respect. It tells people that their unique experiences, their insights, and their critical thinking are essential assets to the shared mission, making their loyalty to that mission deeply personal. Epictetus, who spent his life engaging in dialogue with students of all backgrounds, placed immense importance on this practice. He advised, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." This was more than just a clever aphorism. It was a practical guideline for philosophical living. For Epictetus, the goal of conversation wasn't to win an argument or assert dominance, but to learn, to understand, and to arrive at a more rational conclusion. A leader who embodies this principle approaches every interaction with this mindset. They aren't just waiting for their turn to talk. They are actively listening to understand the reasoning behind the words, to identify the kernel of truth even in flawed arguments, and to make the other person feel truly heard. This creates a powerful psychological safety net, encouraging the kind of honest, innovative, and sometimes difficult conversations that prevent groupthink and drive real progress. Consider the transformative impact this can have within a modern organization. Picture a traditional company where decisions flow strictly from the top down. The CEO announces a major new strategic direction via a glossy presentation, and employees are simply expected to execute. Morale in such an environment is often low because people feel like cogs in a machine, their intelligence and creativity ignored. Now imagine a different leader, one guided by this Stoic value. Before finalizing that same strategy, they hold a series of open forums, not as a performative gesture, but as a genuine fishing expedition for ideas. They ask tough, open-ended questions. What are we missing? What potential pitfalls do you see from your vantage point? How could this initiative make your jobs more difficult? And how can we design it to be better? When an employee from the shipping department raises a valid logistical concern that the executives had completely overlooked, the leader doesn't get defensive. They thank the employee, integrate the feedback into the plan, and publicly credit the contribution. This single act does more for company-wide loyalty than 1,000 bonuses. It proves that hierarchy is irrelevant to good ideas and that every single person has a stake in the outcome. Now turn this lens on your own experiences. Think back to a time when you were part of a team, a family discussion, or a community project. Can you recall the palpable difference between being allowed to speak and truly being heard? In one scenario, you might have offered an idea that was met with nods and then immediately forgotten, leaving you feeling invisible and less likely to contribute next time. Now, remember a moment when someone in charge not only let you speak but engaged with your idea. They asked follow-up questions, they wrestled with your points, and even if they didn't adopt your suggestion entirely, they demonstrated that your perspective had genuinely shifted their thinking. How did that feel? That sense of being valued as a thinking, contributing partner creates a bond of loyalty that is incredibly resilient. It moves the relationship from a transactional one to a collaborative partnership, where your commitment is fueled by the knowledge that your voice truly matters. Some loyalties are built in the quiet moments of trust kept. This principle moves beyond public actions and into the sacred space of private confidence, where the true depth of a leader's character is often revealed. For the Stoics, honesty wasn't just about telling the truth in the open. It was about being utterly reliable in the shadows, where a person's secrets, vulnerabilities, and fears are entrusted to your care. They saw discretion not as a mere social skill, but as a fundamental expression of virtue, a practical application of justice and wisdom. When someone shares something sensitive with you, they are offering a piece of their inner world, and to be careless with that gift is a profound betrayal of reason and our shared humanity. A leader who understands this treats every confidence, whether a personal struggle from an employee or a sensitive piece of strategic information, with the same gravity they would their own. This unwavering dependability in matters both large and small creates a fortress of trust around them, because followers know with absolute certainty that their vulnerabilities are safe in this leader's hands. This security is the bedrock of a loyalty that is both intimate and unbreakable. Seneca, in his role as a statesman and advisor, wrote extensively on the gravity of this responsibility. He cautioned, "A sword may kill a man, but a secret kills friendship and trust." This vivid metaphor captures the destructive power of a broken confidence. A physical weapon can end a life, but a betrayed secret can kill the very soul of a relationship, poisoning it with suspicion and regret. For Seneca, the trustworthy person is one who understands that some words are meant to be received and held, not passed on. He argued that being a reliable confidant is a higher test of character than any public act of bravery, because it is a virtue practiced without an audience and without the expectation of reward. It is integrity in its purest, most private form. A leader who internalizes this sees the act of keeping a secret not as a burden, but as an honor, a sacred duty that strengthens the bonds of trust one quiet moment at a time. We can see the immense power of this principle in the leadership of Queen Elizabeth II throughout her incredibly long reign. She was the recipient of countless state secrets, personal confessions from prime ministers, and private anxieties from world leaders across decades of global turmoil. Her position placed her at the very epicenter of sensitive information, yet her ability to maintain absolute confidentiality became legendary. There are no recorded leaks, no sensational memoirs based on her private conversations, no hints dropped to the press. This was not a passive silence. It was an active, disciplined practice of discretion that earned her the unwavering trust of every government she worked with. Prime ministers from Winston Churchill to Boris Johnson knew they could speak to her with complete candor, sharing their deepest doubts and fears about governing without any concern that it would ever be repeated. This created a unique and priceless safe haven for leadership at the highest level. Their loyalty to the institution of the monarchy and to her personally was built in large part on this unshakable foundation of trustworthiness. She demonstrated that the strongest power often lies not in what you say, but in what you consistently, reliably choose not to. Now, translate this from the halls of Buckingham Palace to the everyday reality of a modern workplace or community. Imagine a team member pulls their manager aside and confesses they are struggling with a debilitating health issue or a difficult family situation that is affecting their performance. They are terrified this information could jeopardize their job or their reputation. A leader who fails this test might inadvertently mention it to another colleague under the guise of concern, or let it subtly influence their assignments in a way that reveals the issue. The breach of trust, even if unintentional, is catastrophic. Now, imagine a leader who embodies Stoic confidentiality. They listen with compassion, assure the employee of their complete discretion, and then take practical steps to support them, adjusting deadlines, offering resources, without ever revealing the underlying reason to anyone else. The employee's relief is immediate and profound. Their loyalty to that manager transforms from professional to deeply personal, because they have experienced firsthand that this is a person of their word, a safe harbor in a storm. They will not only work harder for this leader, but they will also become a vocal advocate for their character, creating a ripple effect of trust throughout the entire team. So I want you to take a quiet moment and look back on your own life. Can you recall a specific instance when you entrusted someone with a piece of sensitive information, a dream you were afraid to share, a mistake you were ashamed of, a fear you were grappling with, and they held that trust with absolute integrity? How did their discretion in that vulnerable moment change your perception of them? Did it create a bond that felt different from other relationships? That profound sense of safety, of being truly seen and yet completely protected, is one of the most powerful human experiences there is. It forges a connection that is immune to disagreement or difficulty. because it is built on the unshakable knowledge that this person will guard your humanity when you are at your most human. That is the quiet, monumental power of trustworthiness, and it is the foundation upon which the deepest loyalties are silently built. Loyalty often follows courage, not comfort. This principle cuts to the very heart of Stoic leadership, because it's easy to stand for your values when the sun is shining and everyone agrees with you. The true test of character comes when upholding those values requires personal risk, social disapproval, or significant sacrifice. The Stoics revered courage not as the absence of fear, but as the judgment that something else is more important than fear. They called it fortitudo, the strength of soul to do what is right, even when it is difficult, dangerous, or disadvantageous. For a leader, this kind of moral courage is infinitely more powerful than any physical bravery. It's the courage to speak an unpopular truth, to protect a vulnerable person, to say no to a profitable but unethical deal, or to take full responsibility for a failure that wasn't entirely your own. This unwavering commitment to principle, especially under fire, does something remarkable. It transforms abstract values into a living, breathing reality that others can see and believe in. Followers aren't just listening to a mission statement. They are witnessing a person who is willing to pay a price for what they believe, and that demonstration inspires a loyalty rooted in profound admiration and shared conviction. Marcus Aurelius, who faced countless tests of his own character, constantly fortified his resolve with this very idea. In his private writings, he posed a challenging question to himself. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. This simple, direct command strips away all excuses and complexities. It reduces every difficult decision to a binary choice between integrity and convenience. For a leader, this mantra becomes a guiding light in the fog of pressure and competing interests. Aurelius understood that the cost of compromising your values is always higher than the cost of upholding them, because the former costs you your self-respect, the very foundation of your ability to lead anyone else. When a leader consistently chooses what is right over what is easy, they send an unambiguous message to everyone around them. Our principles are not just words on a wall. They are the non-negotiable rules we live by, especially when it hurts. This reliability under pressure creates a powerful gravitational pull, attracting people who are hungry for meaning and authenticity, and forging a loyalty that is as deep as it is durable. We can see this principle ignite with incredible force in the historical example of Thomas More, the Lord Chancellor of England under King Henry VIII. When Henry sought to break from the Catholic Church to annul his marriage and remarry, he demanded that all his advisors, including More, swear an oath affirming him as the supreme head of the Church of England. For More, a devout Catholic, this was a direct violation of his deepest religious convictions. The easy, comfortable path was clear. Swear the oath, keep his powerful position, protect his family's wealth and safety, and remain in the king's favor. The courageous path meant certain imprisonment, the impoverishment of his family, and ultimately execution. More chose courage. He refused to swear the oath, defending his conscience and his faith even as his friends begged him to relent, and the king's wrath descended upon him. His final words on the scaffold were, "I die the king's good servant, but God's first." This breathtaking act of moral fortitude, of choosing his values over his life, did not just make him a martyr, it made him a timeless symbol of integrity. His courageous stand in the face of the absolute power of a monarch solidified the loyalty of countless others who shared his faith and his belief in the supremacy of conscience. They were loyal not to the man Thomas More, but to the unwavering principles he embodied, and his courage became a beacon that guided others for centuries. Now translate this from the dramatic stakes of the executioner's block to the modern pressures of a corporate boardroom or a community organization. Imagine a mid-level manager whose boss is pressuring them to fudge quarterly sales numbers to make the department look good for investors. The comfortable path is to comply. It makes the boss happy, it avoids conflict, and it might even come with a bonus. The courageous path is to refuse, to state clearly that it's unethical and that you will not be a part of it, even though it might risk your promotion, make you a target, or even cost you your job. The manager who chooses courage in that moment is doing more than just saving the company from a future scandal. They are demonstrating a standard of integrity that every person on their team will see. Their team members will talk about that moment for years. They will tell the story of the boss who had the guts to say no to pressure from above. That single act of courage will earn a loyalty that 1,000 team-building exercises could never buy, because it proves that the leader's commitment to doing the right thing is real, and that they would never ask their team to do something they themselves would not have the courage to do. So I want you to press pause for a moment and turn this lens on your own life. Look back through your memories and see if you can find a specific instance where someone's courage solidified your trust in them. It doesn't have to be a life or death situation. Maybe it was a coworker who spoke up in a meeting to defend a junior employee who was being unfairly blamed for a mistake. Perhaps it was a friend who stood by you when it was socially inconvenient for them to do so, or a public figure who risked their career to call out an injustice. How did witnessing that person choose principle over comfort change your perception of them? Did it make you trust their character in a way that smooth, easy victories never could? That deep, resonant feeling of respect is the catalyst for the most powerful form of loyalty, the kind that is earned not through power or perks, but through the humble, fearless, and consistent demonstration of what one is willing to stand for. What if loyalty is strongest when everyone lifts each other up? This principle shifts the focus from individual achievement to the collective power of a community bound by mutual aid, revealing a profound Stoic truth about our interconnected nature. The Stoics called this concept sympatheia, the understanding that we are all part of a single, universal community, much like limbs of the same body. When one part suffers, the whole is weakened. When one part is strengthened, the whole flourishes. A leader who internalizes this doesn't just manage individuals. They cultivate an ecosystem where support is the default language and collaboration is the primary currency. This environment does something remarkable. It transforms the group's purpose from a series of individual tasks into a shared mission where each person's success is intertwined with everyone else's. In such a culture, loyalty isn't given just to the leader, but to the entire team, because the team itself becomes a source of strength, belonging, and protection. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle where acts of support breed more support, building a resilient community that can withstand any external pressure. Seneca, in his writings on benefits and duty, captured this idea with elegant clarity. He wrote, "No one can live happily who has regard for himself alone and transforms everything into a question of his own utility. You must live for your neighbor if you would live for yourself." This is the Stoic blueprint for mutual support. It's a radical reframing of self-interest, arguing that our own well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of those around us. A leader who promotes this philosophy actively dismantles internal competition and replaces it with a system of reciprocal aid. They celebrate not just the star performer, but the person who helped them succeed. They reward not only the brilliant idea, but the collaborative effort that brought it to life. This shifts the cultural incentives from "what's in it for me" to "what's best for us," And in doing so, it forges bonds of loyalty that are collective, durable, and incredibly powerful because they are rooted in a shared identity and a proven track record of having each other's backs. We can see this principle create a legendary culture of loyalty in the world of sports, specifically with the San Antonio Spurs under the leadership of coach Greg Popovich. In an era often dominated by superstar egos, Popovich built a decades-long dynasty not by collecting the biggest names, but by meticulously fostering a culture of radical mutual support. He famously prioritized the collective good over individual statistics, even benching his best players at crucial moments to emphasize that no one was above the team. He created rituals where players were expected to be deeply invested in each other's lives, from sharing knowledge of wine to discussing world events, building a genuine fellowship that extended far beyond the basketball court. When a player made a great pass, the entire bench would erupt, not just for the basket but for the unselfish act itself. This unwavering emphasis on "we over me" resulted in a level of trust and loyalty that was palpable. Players routinely took lower salaries to stay with the team, and former players often speak of the organization as a lifelong family. Their loyalty was to the culture Popovich built, a culture where everyone, from the superstar to the last player on the bench, knew they would be supported, valued, and lifted up by everyone around them. Now translate this from the basketball court to the rhythm of a modern company or a community project. Imagine a sales team where commissions are fiercely individual. This environment often creates a dog-eat-dog atmosphere where information is hoarded, colleagues are seen as rivals, and loyalty extends only as far as the next paycheck. Contrast this with a team led by someone practicing this Stoic principle. The leader structures goals and rewards around team performance. They create systems where experienced members are expected to mentor new hires, and they publicly praise those who help others close a deal or solve a problem. In meetings, they might ask, "How can we as a group help Sarah overcome the challenge she's facing with her client?" This simple question reframes the problem from Sarah's individual struggle to a collective challenge for the team to solve together. The message is clear: your success is my success, and your problem is our problem. In this environment, loyalty becomes a shared resource. People aren't just committed to the leader, they are deeply committed to each other because they have experienced the tangible benefits of a community that consistently lifts its members up. So I want you to take a moment and look back on your own experiences. Can you recall being part of a group, a sports team, a volunteer organization, a work project, or even a group of friends where this spirit of mutual support was the defining characteristic? Where people didn't keep score, but instead actively looked for ways to make each other better. Where the group's victory felt like your victory and a teammate's setback felt like a shared responsibility. How did that environment make you feel? Did it create a sense of safety and belonging that made you want to contribute more? Did it inspire a loyalty to the group that was deeper and more personal than any loyalty to a single leader could ever be? That powerful collective feeling is the essence of this Stoic principle. It proves that the most unbreakable loyalty is not commanded from the top down, but built from the inside out, through 1,000 small acts of lifting each other up. The simplest way to earn loyalty is to truly be there when it matters. In an age of endless distractions and divided attention, the act of giving someone your complete and undivided focus has become a rare and powerful currency. The Stoics, often seen as philosophers of grand resilience, were in fact deeply practical about the small, daily interactions that form the bedrock of trust. They championed a concept known as prosauch, or mindful attention, which is the disciplined practice of focusing your entire mind on the task or person directly in front of you. For a leader, this isn't about multitasking efficiently. It's about the radical choice to unitask with profound presence. When you are fully engaged in a conversation, making eye contact, listening without mentally formulating your response, and absorbing not just the words but the meaning behind them, you send an unambiguous signal to the other person. In this moment, nothing is more important than this exchange. This level of attention is a silent form of respect that makes people feel deeply seen, heard, and valued, not for their output but for their humanity. Epictetus, who taught the art of living a good life through practical daily exercises, placed immense importance on this practice. He advised his students, when you are about to undertake some task, remind yourself what kind of task it is. If you are going to bathe, he said, remember what happens in a bathhouse. People splash water, someone might steal your clothes, others will be rude. By mentally preparing for these distractions, you can maintain your focus on your own purpose for being there. He applied this same logic to conversations. When you are about to speak with someone, remind yourself that it is a sacred act of connection. Prepare for distractions, your own wandering thoughts, external interruptions, the urge to steer the conversation, and consciously choose to set them aside. This Stoic preparation isn't about building a wall against the world. It's about creating a clear space within which a genuine meeting of minds can occur. It is the practice of bringing your whole self to the present moment, which is the greatest gift you can offer another person. Consider the transformative impact of a leader who has mastered this art. Picture a busy hospital department head making their rounds. They could rush from room to room, checking charts on a tablet, offering quick, generic words of encouragement while their mind is already on the next patient or an administrative meeting. Patients might feel processed, not cared for. Now imagine a different leader. They enter a patient's room and place the tablet on a chair. They sit down, make eye contact, and ask, "How are you really feeling today?" They listen to the answer without looking at their watch. They notice the patient's body language and the hesitation in their voice, prompting a deeper question that reveals an unspoken anxiety about their treatment. This entire interaction might take only 3 minutes longer than the rushed version, but the difference in impact is monumental. The patient feels like they are the most important person in that leader's world at that moment. The nurse accompanying the leader on rounds sees this profound respect and feels a surge of pride and loyalty to a boss who embodies the core values of their profession so completely. This mindful presence doesn't just improve communication, it builds a reservoir of goodwill and devotion that flows throughout the entire team. Now, bring this concept out of the professional realm and into the fabric of your own daily life. Think about the last time you were in a conversation with someone who was clearly distracted. Maybe they were glancing at their phone, their eyes darting around the room, or they were just waiting for their turn to talk. How did that make you feel? Diminished, perhaps unimportant? Now, contrast that with a memory of speaking with someone who gave you their complete attention. They weren't just hearing your words, they were listening to you. Can you recall the warmth of that feeling, the sense of connection and validation that arose in that moment? That feeling is the seed of loyalty. It creates a powerful, often unspoken, bond because it satisfies a fundamental human need to be acknowledged and understood. When a leader consistently provides that gift of presence, they are not managing people, they are connecting with them on a human level, and from that connection springs a loyalty that is as natural as it is unbreakable. Loyalty thrives where fairness is the rule, not the exception. This principle gets to the very heart of the Stoic view of justice, which isn't about complex legal systems, but about the daily, practical application of impartiality in every interaction. For the Stoics, justice was one of the 4 cardinal virtues, a non-negotiable pillar of a well-lived life. They believed that every rational being, by virtue of their shared capacity for reason, deserved to be treated with fundamental fairness and respect. A leader who internalizes this doesn't just occasionally make fair decisions. They build an entire ecosystem where equity is the default setting. This consistent impartiality is a powerful antidote to the poison of office politics, cliques, and resentment. When people know that their success depends on the quality of their work and character, not on their personal relationship with the boss or their ability to flatter, they are freed to focus their energy on what truly matters, contributing their best. This environment of meritocratic fairness doesn't just prevent discontent. It actively generates a broad, deep-seated loyalty because it makes everyone feel like they have a genuine shot, that the playing field is level, and that their effort will be justly recognized. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in the known world, constantly reminded himself of this duty to impartiality in his private meditations. He wrote, "A person's worth is measured by the worth of what he values. For a leader, this is a profound challenge. If you value sycophancy, gossip, or personal loyalty over competence and integrity, then your organization will reflect those shallow values and its worth will diminish. But if you value fairness above all, you measure people by a universal standard, and your organization becomes a magnet for talent and trust." Aurelius urged himself to see the common humanity in everyone, from the senatorial rival to the lowliest slave, writing, "Enter into every man's ruling reason, and let every man enter into yours." This exercise in perspective-taking is the enemy of favoritism. It forces a leader to step outside their own biases and see the world through the eyes of others, understanding their hopes, their efforts, and their desire for fair treatment. This isn't a soft skill. It's a rigorous discipline of the mind that ensures decisions are made from a place of principled objectivity, not personal preference. We can see the powerful effects of this principle in the legendary leadership of General George C. Marshall, the architect of the American military during World War II, and later the Secretary of State who created the Marshall Plan. Marshall was famously, almost ruthlessly, impartial. He maintained a little black book not of friends, but of officers he had noted for their competence, regardless of their background or connections. He was utterly indifferent to flattery and immune to political pressure. Most famously, he passed over countless friends and senior generals for the pivotal command of the D-Day invasion, instead choosing the less-known but supremely competent Dwight D. Eisenhower. This decision, based solely on merit and strategic fit, was a masterclass in Stoic fairness. It sent a shockwave through the entire Allied command structure. Competence, not cronyism, would be rewarded. The loyalty Marshall earned was not the fawning loyalty of favorites, but the profound, enduring loyalty of every soldier and officer who knew that their leader would judge them fairly and give them opportunities based on their abilities. This culture of meritocracy was a significant factor in the effectiveness of the entire Allied war effort. Now, bring this concept from the theater of war into the dynamics of a modern workplace. Imagine a team with two managers. The first manager has a few go-to people. They go to lunch together, they get the most interesting projects, and their mistakes are often overlooked. The rest of the team, no matter how hard they work, feel like they are on the outside looking in. Their loyalty is minimal. They are working for a paycheck, waiting for an opportunity to leave. Contrast this with a second manager who consciously fights against their own unconscious biases. They use clear, transparent criteria for assigning projects and awarding promotions. They make a point of soliciting ideas from the quietest person in the room. When a coveted opportunity arises, they don't just give it to the most familiar face. They consider all qualified candidates and explain the decision process. This leader's team might not always agree with every outcome, but they will always trust the process. They know the game is not rigged. This fundamental fairness inspires a powerful, collective loyalty to the leader and to each other because everyone is invested in maintaining the integrity of the system. So I want you to take a moment and turn this lens on your own experiences. Cast your mind back through the various groups, teams, or institutions you've been a part of. Can you recall the palpable difference between an environment that felt fundamentally fair and one that felt subject to the whims of favoritism? In the unfair environment, how did you feel? Probably disengaged, cynical, and constantly calculating how to get into the inner circle. Now, remember an environment where you felt the rules were applied equally, where you were judged on your merits, and where you saw others rewarded for genuine achievement, not just for being liked. How did that sense of fairness affect your motivation and your commitment? It likely made you want to contribute more, to be your best self, because you knew that your efforts would be seen and valued on their own terms. That powerful, positive response to justice is a universal human truth, and it is the reason why fairness will always be a cornerstone of unbreakable loyalty. What if the most loyal leaders are those who never stop growing? This principle reveals a profound truth about human nature. We are instinctively drawn to those who are in a state of becoming, who treat their own development not as a sign of weakness but as a lifelong project worthy of dedication. The Stoics didn't believe in a fixed state of perfection. They saw wisdom as a path, not a destination. For them, the pursuit of self-improvement was the very essence of a virtuous life, a continuous process of honing one's character through daily reflection and deliberate practice. A leader who embodies this commitment sends a powerful, unspoken message to their followers. I am not above you, I am alongside you on this journey of growth. This visible humility dismantles the illusion of infallibility that so often isolates leaders, replacing it with a relatable humanity that invites connection and trust. When people see their leader actively working to become a better listener, a wiser decision-maker, or a more empathetic person, it doesn't diminish their authority. It amplifies it because it proves their authority is earned through effort, not just inherited through title. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, captured this endless pursuit with characteristic elegance. He wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." This simple, profound directive reframes life itself as a classroom, where every experience, every interaction, and every mistake is a potential lesson for those willing to pay attention. For a Stoic leader, this isn't a passive wish, it's an active discipline. It involves the daily practice of self-examination, of reviewing one's actions at the end of each day against the yardstick of virtue. Did I act with courage? Was I fair? Did I exercise temperance? This rigorous honesty with oneself is the engine of improvement. A leader who practices this openly doesn't just improve themselves, they give everyone around them permission to do the same. They create a culture where growth is valued over pretending to know everything, where curiosity is rewarded over certainty, and where the goal isn't to be the smartest person in the room, but to help everyone in the room become smarter together. This environment is a fertile ground for loyalty because people are not just following a static figurehead, they are investing in a shared journey of elevation. We can see this principle powerfully embodied in the modern leadership of Satya Nadella at Microsoft. When he took over as CEO, the company was widely seen as a past its prime giant, plagued by internal competition and a know-it-all culture. Nadella's first and most transformative act was not a grand strategic shift, but a personal and public commitment to a growth mindset. He openly discussed his own need to learn, to listen, and to empathize more deeply. He encouraged his employees to read Carol Dweck's book on the topic and began framing challenges not as threats, but as opportunities to learn and adapt. He famously shifted the company's core mission from a computer on every desk to empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, a purpose inherently focused on enabling the growth of others. By modeling this vulnerability and intellectual curiosity himself, he gave 70,000 employees permission to shed their defensive postures, to collaborate, and to innovate without the fear of failure. This cultural transformation, sparked by a leader's public dedication to his own improvement, reignited innovation, skyrocketed the company's value, and fostered a renewed sense of loyalty and purpose throughout the organization. People weren't just working for Microsoft, they were growing with it, led by a CEO who was demonstrably growing himself. Now, bring this concept into the scope of your own life. Think beyond the corporate world and consider a coach, a teacher, a community leader, or even a parent. Can you recall someone in a position of authority who was openly on their own journey of growth? Perhaps it was a manager who took a public speaking course to improve their presentations and then shared their learnings with the team. Maybe it was a parent who apologized after losing their temper, explaining they were working on managing their anger. How did witnessing that person actively strive to be better change your perception of them? Did it make them more relatable, more respectable? That powerful combination of humility and ambition is incredibly compelling. It creates a loyalty that is dynamic and active because you are not just loyal to who that person is, but to who they are courageously trying to become. It inspires you to look at your own potential for growth and to feel a deep sense of allegiance to anyone who helps light that path. The most effective leaders are both strong enough to lead and soft enough to care. This is the essence of the 28th Stoic principle, a masterful synthesis of seemingly opposing qualities that creates a leadership style both formidable and deeply human. The Stoics never saw strength and compassion as mutually exclusive. In fact, they argued that true virtue required their seamless integration. For them, courage without empathy is just brutality, and kindness without boundaries is merely weakness. The ideal leader is like a well-made sword, a core of unbreakable steel, carefully sheathed to prevent unnecessary harm. This balance is what earns not just the respect that comes from fear of authority, but the genuine affection that comes from trust in one's character. A leader who can make a difficult, unpopular decision with unwavering resolve, and then personally explain that decision to the affected individuals with genuine empathy, demonstrates a psychological wholeness that is incredibly compelling. Followers see someone who is neither a pushover nor a tyrant, but a complete person who can navigate the full spectrum of human experience with wisdom and grace. Epictetus, who understood the corrupting nature of power as well as anyone, provided profound guidance on this delicate balance. He taught that while we must be disciplined in our judgments and firm in our principles, we must also exercise our power with profound humanity. He advised, if you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have lost your way. Instead, be satisfied with doing what is right and doing it with compassion for those who struggle to understand. This is the Stoic heart of balanced leadership. The strength comes from the internal compass, the unwavering commitment to doing what is right regardless of external opinion. The compassion comes from the understanding that others are on their own journeys, facing their own challenges and operating with their own limitations. A leader following this advice doesn't need to be liked by everyone, but they will act in a way that is both respectably strong and authentically kind, because their actions are rooted in virtue, not in a craving for validation or control. A powerful historical embodiment of this principle is found in the leadership of Queen Elizabeth I of England. Faced with immense religious and political turmoil, she needed immense strength to hold her nation together against seemingly insurmountable odds, including the threat of invasion from the Spanish Armada. She was a formidable ruler, a brilliant strategist, and a master of political theater who could command absolute authority. Yet, she consistently tempered this strength with remarkable compassion and accessibility. She was known for her famous progresses, journeys around the country where she made herself available to her subjects, listening to their grievances and showing a genuine interest in their lives. She cultivated an image of herself as the mother of her people, using her femininity not as a weakness but as a source of a different kind of strength, one based on care, nurture, and connection. This potent combination of the iron will of a monarch and the perceived heart of a mother forged a loyalty among the English people that was both fierce and deeply personal. They respected her strength and loved her for her compassion, seeing in her a ruler who was both powerful and profoundly human. Now, bring this concept into the modern context of any organization. Imagine a department head who has to implement a major, disruptive change that will require significant adjustments from their team. A leader who leads with strength alone might issue a directive via email, outlining the new rules and the consequences for non-compliance. This approach gets the job done, but it breeds anxiety, resentment, and a sense of being dehumanized. Now, imagine a leader who balances that strength with compassion. They call a meeting and explain the change with clarity and conviction, leaving no doubt about the necessity and the expectation of compliance. That's the strength. But then they dedicate the majority of the meeting to a compassionate, open-ended discussion. I know this is going to be difficult. How will this change impact your specific work? What concerns do you have? What support do you need from me to make this transition successfully? This approach acknowledges the human cost of the decision. It demonstrates that the leader's strength is in service of the mission, but their compassion is reserved for the people who have to carry it out. The team's loyalty in the second scenario will be exponentially greater because they are being treated as partners in a difficult endeavor, not as soldiers being sent into battle. So take a moment to look back on your own experiences with authority. Can you identify a person who mastered this delicate dance between strength and compassion? Perhaps it was a coach who pushed you harder than you thought possible on the field, but was the first to put an arm around your shoulder after a tough loss. Maybe it was a teacher who held you to a strict academic standard, yet stayed after school for hours to help you grasp a difficult concept. How did that combination of high expectations and genuine care make you feel about that person? Did you respect them more? Did you want to work harder for them, not out of fear, but out of a desire to not let them down? That powerful, dual-edged loyalty is the unique reward for a leader who understands that the ultimate strength lies not in hardness, but in the ability to be both the rock and the sanctuary. What if the deepest loyalty is to those who build something that outlasts them? This final principle elevates leadership from the realm of daily management into the domain of timeless contribution, where the true measure of success is not what you achieved for yourself, but what you built for others long after you are gone. The Stoics held an expansive view of time, seeing their own brief lives as a single link in a great chain of being that stretched from the distant past into the far future. From this perspective, a life well lived was one that strengthened that chain for those who would follow. A leader who internalizes this shifts their entire focus from the immediate applause of the present to the silent, enduring impact of the future. They are no longer working for a quarterly report or a fleeting boost in popularity. They are building an institution, cultivating a culture, or championing an ideal that will continue to nourish and guide others for generations. This long-term perspective is the ultimate antidote to the petty politics and short-sighted decisions that so often erode trust, because it proves that the leader's ultimate loyalty is not to their own ego or career, but to the mission itself and to the countless unknown people whose lives it will someday touch. Marcus Aurelius, writing by candlelight in his military camp, constantly wrestled with this immense responsibility and his own fleeting existence. He penned a powerful reminder to himself that has echoed through the centuries: do not act as if you had 10,000 years to live. The inescapable is hanging over your head. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. This is not a morbid fixation on death, but an urgent call to purposeful action. It's the realization that our time to make a difference is finite and precious, and that the only thing that truly matters is what we do with that time to improve the common lot. For a leader, this meditation is a guiding star. It asks a simple, devastating question at the end of every day: if my leadership ended tomorrow, what would remain? Would it be a void quickly filled by someone else, or a foundation so strong and purposeful that it would continue to support and inspire? This focus on legacy building transforms a leader's daily decisions, big and small, into conscious investments in a future they will never see, and it is this selfless investment that inspires the most profound and lasting loyalty. We can witness the awesome power of this principle in the life and work of someone like Jonas Salk, the developer of the polio vaccine. When he embarked on his research, the scientific community was focused on profit and patents. The prevailing model was to create a treatment and then control its production. Salk operated from a completely different, Stoic-inspired paradigm. When asked in a television interview who owned the patent for the vaccine, he seemed almost baffled by the question, replying, "Well, the people, I would say. There is no patent. Could you patent the sun?" This was not a casual quip. It was the utterance of a man whose entire focus was on legacy and impact, not personal gain. He had built something, a tool to eradicate a disease that had terrified generations, and he gave it away freely to humanity. His reward was not a royalty check, but the knowledge that his work would outlive him, protecting children for centuries to come. The loyalty and admiration this act generated was not confined to his immediate team. It became a global phenomenon. People were loyal to his ideal, to his profound demonstration that the highest purpose of skill and leadership is to serve the common good. His legacy was the vaccine itself, and the timeless standard he set for scientific altruism. Now, translate this from the history of medicine to the modern challenges of our communities and companies. This principle doesn't require a miracle cure. It operates anywhere people are building something meant to last. Consider a small business owner who, instead of selling her successful local bakery to a large chain for a massive profit, chooses a different path. She restructures the business as a worker-owned cooperative, ensuring that the recipes, the relationships with local farmers, and the community hub she created will continue to thrive under the care of her employees long after she retires. She is prioritizing the legacy of the bakery, its role in the community, the jobs it provides, the culture it sustains over a short-term financial windfall for herself. The loyalty this generates is immense. Her employees are no longer just working for a paycheck. They are stewards of a legacy they helped build, and their commitment is to preserving and enhancing that gift for the next owner and the next generation of customers. Their loyalty is to the enduring idea of the bakery itself and to the leader who had the vision to make it eternal. So I want you to take a final, quiet moment to look both backward and forward. Look back through history or through your own life and identify a person whose work or influence did not end with them. It might be a former teacher whose belief in you still guides your choices decades later. It could be a grandparent who planted a family tradition of generosity that you now continue with your own children. Or it could be a public figure like Stoic, whose contribution became a permanent part of the human landscape. How does the enduring nature of their impact affect your feelings toward them? Does it create a sense of loyalty that feels different from admiration for a temporary success? That deep, resonant respect is the unique reward for those who build for the future. It is the understanding that the most powerful way to secure a place in the hearts of others is not to carve your name into a wall, but to build a house so strong and so welcoming that it will shelter and inspire long after the builder is gone. So we have journeyed through the psychological blueprint that guided some of history's most effective leaders, uncovering the timeless Stoic principles that forge bonds of loyalty strong enough to build empires and sustain them for centuries. This was never about manipulation or power plays. It was about the profound inner work of character building, the unwavering integrity that earns trust, the genuine empathy that makes people feel seen, the resilient composure that provides a safe harbor in any storm, and the impartial fairness that assures everyone of their value. These are not mere tactics. They are virtues, and together they form an unbreakable chain of connection between leader and follower. From Marcus Aurelius leading with virtue to Hadrian facing adversity with grace, from Lincoln's radical honesty to Shackleton's empowering trust, we see a consistent theme. Psychological mastery begins with self-mastery. The external loyalty you seek is first built within, through the daily, disciplined choice to act with reason, justice, courage, and wisdom, regardless of the circumstances. This entire exploration leads us back to a simple, profound truth left to us by the great Stoic teacher Seneca. He wrote, "A good character is the only guarantee of everlasting, carefree happiness." While he spoke of happiness, his insight cuts directly to the heart of lasting loyalty. Your team, your family, your friends, their deepest allegiance will never be to your title, your wealth, or your fleeting successes. It will be to your character. It is the one thing that remains steady when everything else changes, the unwavering core that others can always count on. A good character, forged in the Stoic fire, is the ultimate guarantee of the trust and devotion that make any endeavor, any relationship, and any life truly meaningful and enduring. Now this blueprint is in your hands. The real work begins not in commanding others, but in conducting your own life by these principles. I encourage you to take a moment of quiet reflection. Look at your own roles as a leader at work, a partner at home, a member of your community. Which one of these 29 principles resonates most with you right now? Where is there an opportunity to lead with more virtue, to practice more empathy, to demonstrate more consistent fairness? Choose just one, focus on it this week. See how this inner shift alters your external world and strengthens the bonds you have with those around you. The conversation does not end here. This is a shared journey of growth. I would love to hear which Stoic principle you are choosing to focus on and how it impacts your life. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's learn from each other and build a community dedicated to this timeless wisdom. If you found this guide valuable and want to continue this journey into Stoicism and leadership, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Thank you for watching, and remember, the most powerful empire you will ever build is the one founded on the unshakable loyalty of those who choose to walk beside you.